across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connection device, as always, great to have your company. I hope you enjoyed yesterday afternoon with the sunshine. I was out in the garden, absolutely lovely. Still quite pleasant today, but yep, guys, that was summer. You're welcome. Anyway, if you do miss anything of today's show, I'm on all the way till 1 o'clock, so you can go to my YouTube page afterwards if you want. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss Iran accusing Donald Trump and Israel of breaching their ceasefire agreement, with Tehran declaring the Strait of Hormuz continues to be shut. Donald Trump attacking NATO again for a lack of support after meeting with the NATO chief yesterday. Reports that the president might punish some allies who he has deemed unhelpful. Oh, I wonder if we're going to be on that list. Meanwhile, our own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is over in the Gulf, prancing around, thinking he's going to do something of some use out there. God knows what. Probably he's less use than HMS, was it Dragon? What's it? What's it called?
HMS Dragon.
It is HMS Dragon. I'm thinking the name doesn't sound right, but which is currently back in port. And of course, at the same time, we've got more Channel migrants coming. Failure to do a deal with the French yet again. Oh yeah, and the small matter of a Russian warship parading embargoed oil vessels from Russia through the Channel with the two fingers up to the British authorities. I mean, seriously, you couldn't make this stuff up. No wonder, by the way, polling shows that Britain is more divided now than even at the time of Brexit. Plus, we're also going to be talking about sentencing. Victims and bereaved families will be given more time to challenge a sentence if they think a judge was too lenient, which I think is happening far too often. Joining me for the chat today, as you've already heard him, you have your black in your mind. You think that doesn't sound right.
I do that all the time.
Philip Ingram, it's an age thing. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Very good.
Good morning.
To you. I've been blaming chocolate overdoing it on the chocolate front for Tuesday.
I have that problem.
Yesterday was the heat. Today it's just age.
Too much chocolate in the heat. At our age, and then that's it.
Yeah, exactly. We're allowed to get away with it all now. We can say what we want, apparently.
It's nothing to do with the gin.
No, exactly. Always good to get you in. We were talking about a small matter of war. We always seem to have a matter of war. I don't know. Is it you bringing this war stuff along to us?
I have to start them so we get something to talk about.
Well, there is that. Yeah. There is that. Donald Trump's doing it all on his own. Don't you worry. Look, we had a ceasefire announced at the 11th hour after all this sabre rattling from Donald Trump, and I think we're all a little bit relieved when that happened. 2-week ceasefire, talk starting tomorrow, being led by J.D. Vance on the American side. Let's hope that some good comes of that. In the meantime, we have had continued missiles being fired on Gulf states by Iranian. We don't army. We don't know whether these are directed by Tehran or whether they are acting of their own volition. We've also had Israel continuing, and in fact, upgrading and escalating to the highest level so far their attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon, insisting that this ceasefire does not include Lebanon. The Iranians say it does. The Pakistanis who brokered the deal say it does. America now says it doesn't. But everyone's had a misunderstanding, according to J.D. Vance. It's all very confusing. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Mm-hmm. Ships aren't getting out with oil, with gas, other goods. We are still going to face a cost of living crisis, probably for months, possibly even years ahead. And no one feels very sure that we have actually got a peace, and indeed, if we do have a peace that is better than we had before this war started. You're a former senior military intelligence officer, Philip. Where are we?
Where are we? Well, the problem we have is we live in the information age where everyone expects everything to happen instantaneously.
Yeah. So
you get a ceasefire and everyone goes, "Phew, that's wonderful, oil price comes down and everything's back to normal." No, it's not. These things take days or weeks or months to work out and where they're going. And if we look at what is being floated around as the plans from Iran and the United States, the Iranians produced a 10-point plan, the United States produced a 15-point plan, but there are about 200 different variants of these that are out there. There's nothing that's come out.
The Iranian 10-point plan is laughable.
Well, both of them are so diametrically opposed, but at least there's two pieces of paper that both sides are sitting down and starting to talk about. When we look at what's going on between Israel and Hezbollah, and compared elsewhere, Israel backed the United States and supported the United States in its attacking of Iran, but Israel has been fighting Hezbollah for years and years. They are separate. And us trying to bring them together, and the Iranians want to try and bring them together because they know that that will cause the international community a bit of consternation, a bit of hand-wringing, and they'll go, oh no, this has to be included.
Let's all slap the hand of Israel.
Exactly, they're seeing an opportunity to Israel slap here and to try and create differences. They are separate operations, and Israel took the opportunity to further its efforts against Hezbollah whenever Hezbollah were distracted and not getting the support from the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, who control them, who pay for them, who equip them and train them.
They're an Iran-funded terrorist
Exactly,
group.
because, well, it's more than funded. It's directed, it's equipped and trained. Because the IRGC are focused on something else at the moment, and that's dealing with the Americans and firing missiles into other Gulf states and everything else.
It's been fascinating watching some of the BBC reports. You know my views on Jeremy Byrne, Lisa Set, and their star reporters.
It's embarrassing.
I mean, genuinely, their reports. It's certainly with regards to Lebanon. It's as if Israel just basically, Benjamin Netanyahu woke up one Tuesday morning and decided to start firing rockets at innocent civilians in Lebanon. No. Hezbollah has been constantly raining missiles down on Israel, in particular from October the 8th, 2023, after the October 7th attacks. And we've got tens of thousands of Israelis who've had to move from northern Israel, just being displaced because they're not safe in their homes. So the reason we're not getting a load of deaths is because Israel actually looks after its people. As always, the IDF, as they did in Gaza, they warn civilians, get out of this area. Hezbollah have totally ensconced themselves, not just into southern Israel, southern Lebanon, but also in Beirut. But they are in domestic homes. I mean, they build missile silos within homes.
Oh, 100%, because it's the psyche that do. And let me put Hezbollah into context. I've been chasing in my military career Hezbollah for decades in different places. I had them in our detention facility in Iraq because they were in training people on how to use improvised explosive devices against our troops and killing them. The same thing happened in Afghanistan. And Hezbollah are not just one of the world's largest, not sponsors, but trainers of terrorism and facilitators of terrorism. They're also across the Middle East region the biggest money launderers that there are going, the biggest drug smuggling gang that's there, the biggest gang that does people trafficking and trafficking children for sex across the region.
They're nice people.
They are lovely.
Genuinely.
They are lovely people.
Israel's doing us all a favour.
Yeah, under the United Nations Security Council resolution that brought the United Nations force into southern Lebanon, the requirement in that was for Hezbollah to disband. They haven't disbanded. They've kept control of it. They are breaking a UN Security Council resolution.
This is the thing. It's just unbelievable, and yet I know.
But it's all Israel's fault.
Well, yeah. Also, I'm getting off 7,000 shekels for saying this. No, it's just facts. We're just doing facts. But here's the thing.
You get 7,000, and you get 5.5.
Oh, you want to negotiate better with Netanyahu. I mean, this is the laughable thing that we get on social media. Oh, what with us killing babies in Gaza all day. Don't know how I have time to do my day job. I really don't. But so the focus has been on Israel on this. But we've also seen, let's say, these attacks on Gulf states. UAE has had a number of attacks overnight. It doesn't feel like it's a ceasefire to a lot of people. The question is, if they do a deal, Strait of Hormuz, I mean, currently the Iranians, and apparently don't from what Donald Trump has said, we'll basically both charge money. This idea that they'll be able to charge boats, we're looking at $2 million a boat.
Which is against international law anyway.
International law to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. I mean, they're going to raise billions for their own funding anyway. They want to have sanctions dropped and the like. Donald Trump was always very critical of democratic regimes and indeed some Republican regimes for negotiating with the Iranians on the basis you can't negotiate with these mad lunatics. They're not trustworthy, right on both counts. And yet he's now going to negotiate with them. But they will lie and say and do whatever they need to get what they want. But right now, it doesn't feel to me like all the war aims have been achieved, such as they were. And I'm not someone who expects a war to end within 3 days and for no one to die and for everything to be perfect and therefore to be no cost of living impact on us and other countries. I think people need to wake up and smell the coffee on that front. To defend freedom and democracy and indeed our standard of living in the West, I'm afraid you're going to have to stand up to tyrants like the mullahs in Iran, and not just one Ayatollah, but the entire regime. has this war achieved anything? I'm seeing people say this is an abject failure, this is a total success. I mean, my guess is it's somewhere in between. Where do you stand on this?
Well, it's too early to say what it's achieved. You know, the Gulf states turned around to Donald Trump and said, "Don't attack Iran." But if you do attack Iran, you need to complete the job, and complete the job means that the regime has got no more control, and the IRGC has got no more control across the country.
Near that.
And from a military perspective, that is a medium-term option to try and set those conditions. Now, that doesn't preclude everything that Donald Trump is saying as being true, taking into account his usual flurry and exaggerative language that he uses and everything else, because he is negotiating with an element of the Iranian regime that, if you look at what's happened over the last few days, the Iranians have said, we're not negotiating, we are negotiating, we've got a plan, we don't have a plan, we aren't doing this. So he's talking to someone. What he's trying to do is empower them and embolden them to be in a position to take over from the current regime. And they're not quite in a position to do that at the moment. But the more he does that, the more then the elements of the old regime are going to be kicking back. And therefore, that's what's happening at the minute. They're kicking back. And it's very careful, a very careful balancing act. We're not going to know the detail of exactly who he's talking to, what influence they have inside Iran, whether that influence is growing, and what's impeding that, because that's all part of the wider plan that's going on. And whilst I don't trust Donald Trump and I don't trust Pete Hegseth or Steve Witkoff, I do trust some of the military planners that are behind this, because they're very, very, very smart people.
And Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State.
And Marco Rubio is more of a grown-up in the audience. But the people that are dealing with this on the ground are grown-ups, and hopefully they'll get it right.
Okay, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with these talks, if ceasefire holds or not. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer travelled to the Gulf yesterday. That's exactly my response. According to newspaper reports, Number 10 are trying to rebrand Keir Starmer as a sort of a global statesman ahead of the local elections. This idea that actually there's been, basically tepid enthusiasm, a sort of for his stance, which is that he hasn't really got involved really, and that has been vaguely, I would say vaguely not unpopular. I think that's as far as I would go with on this, that he somehow accidentally, while sort of falling off the fence post, came down on what a lot of people think is the right side. Now, I think those people are actually wrong. I think we should have been more instrumental to the US, certainly said, look, okay, we won't do offensive stuff ourselves, but yes, you can use our base as your ally, and our number one interest is actually siding with our number one economic, defence and security ally. However, he's around in the Gulf, apparently wants to play some role in brokering reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. But again, doing what? What is exactly does he propose to do? We haven't got any aircraft carriers out there. We haven't, we've got, I know we've got some ability to remove mines and things like that, but that's not the issue.
The Labour government withdrew the last minesweeper in January 2026 from the Gulf and closed the operation down there. Now the Tories have started doing that. The minesweepers are coming to the end of their life, but it's on Keir Starmer's shout that it was stopped, and we don't have a naval vessel in that part of the
HMS Dragon, which was protecting RAF Akrotiri, is now back in port being mended. But this is the thing. He says there's a lot of work to do to get oil and gas through the Strait of Hormuz, we have no diplomatic, military, big power or hard power or soft power influence, do we?
No, we don't. And putting this into context, what Keir Starmer turned around and said about us not getting directly involved in the Americans launching their attack against Iran, he is lying to the Labour voting public, because he is treating them as complete idiots who want to believe him, and unfortunately a lot of them are, because there's an awful lot of capability on UK bases that were being used in the run-up to preparation for the Americans. There are facilities that I know were being used during the bombing campaign and to do battle damage assessment at the end of it, and he then changes his mind 2 days later and is trying to say that we're only doing defensive operations. Well, the best form of defence is offence. Now, we were never asked to be involved in sending RAF aircraft over Iranian airspace and dropping bombs, because the Americans and the Israelis had more than enough capability to do that. We have provided support from everywhere else, and it's this, and this is what's
we have been shooting down, our jets have been shooting down missiles into the Gulf states.
We've got RAF gunners who are now aces because they've shot down more than 5 drones in protecting the Gulf and everything else. So we've been directly involved at every stage the whole way through, and Keir Starmer is using his typical lawyer language to try and wordsmith things to bluff the British voting public because he's focusing on domestic issues only.
And again, and this is what worries me, is actually damaging us on the world stage, which ultimately will damage our national interest more. Well, this is the question I want to put to our audience, because Keir Starmer's in the Gulf. He's arrived in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai today. He's hoping to help broker the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, does he have any power over this whatsoever, hard or soft power? Meanwhile, he can't even control migrant dinghies coming over from France or the Russian warship in the Channel, and we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. What is your reaction to that? Because it seems to me this is just, I mean, frankly, a national humiliation. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Also get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. But this is the extraordinary thing. We've got these sanctioned oil vessels. And OK, although Russia, the Americans have basically said some Russian oil vessels can get through because they're basically, in a deal with Putin, because whatever Putin asks, he gets. But the Admiral Grigorovich is a Black Sea Fleet frigate, and it's a Russian warship, and it's currently accompanying a pair of shadow fleet ships. So these are Russian oil tankers carrying oil, which have been sanctioned, are not allowed on the highs. They are supposed to be seized. Keir Starmer and with other people said, we are going to seize these vessels because they are sanctioned. Well, Vladimir Putin just openly, not even just like on the high seas, through the Channel. He has sent these two shadow fleet ships with. He has then sent the Black Sea Fleet frigate with it, with a British naval vessel following behind. I mean, this is a national humiliation. We can't stop the little dinghies. We said to the French, the latest is we're going to intercept and return small boats. The French said no. French police have stood by as migrants crowd onto dinghies. It's been on video once again. 4 migrants have died in the Channel. Again, if you're fleeing Libya, I get it. You're fleeing France. I'm so sorry. I don't want anyone to lose their life, but you shouldn't be getting on those dinghies, and that's your choice. You make a stupid choice like that to get on an overcrowded dinghy to leave a safe country. More fool you. I'm sorry, and if you put a kid on it, and if you still live, I want you prosecuted, because you're putting a kid in jail. Absolutely. You're not fleeing France. Don't be so ridiculous. But we can't protect ourselves from dinghies, or the Russians just blatantly putting 2 fingers up to us, taking these vessels through, and their own warships through the Channel. And Keir Starmer's prancing around the Middle East, thinking he's, I don't know, Hugh Grant in Love Actually, standing up to, whether it's, he's been standing up to Donald Trump. Oh, I'm the big I am. They're laughing at him.
They are laughing.
They're laughing at us because of him.
No, Russian ships frequently go through the Channel, so that in itself is not an issue. It's the fact that this Russian ship is with a couple of shadow fleet tankers after Keir Starmer has said we're now going to arrest them and given the MOD allegedly the authority. Why the MOD is not now taking the initiative and arresting these ships and taking them into port, because the Russians aren't going to do anything mid-Channel about it. If we send special forces onto those ships, the Russians aren't going to do anything. It will be calling their bluff, and we need to be hard on the Russians. We need to come down very hard on them. Because that's the one thing that is missing. They've been taking the mick out of us for years now. Yeah, Putin is sticking 2 fingers up at the UK, and he's laughing the whole way through. And if he does this, he's going to do more. And we're just inviting more and more action. And that'll bring more direct action into the UK. He's testing us and testing us and testing us, and we are failing that test every single time. It's a national humiliation. I mean, I completely get, we have a stake in whether or not the Strait of Hormuz is open or not. We are particularly at risk. IMF and the OECD have pointed out we are going to face the biggest sort of price shocks in terms of fuel and everything else because we import so much for energy. Oh, it's almost like we even predicted that on ourselves as well. This is the bit do you think we've got any sources of oil or gas for ourselves? If only we had somewhere near us in a sea some source of oil or gas. Here's the thing I do not get. So all the international bodies, who I think may well know what they're doing on some level, they're saying that because we import more fuel, we are at greater risk of these fuel hikes, these international fuel hikes. And yet we've got Ed Miliband, Keir Starmer, and all the rest of them, and Rachel Reeves all saying, no. If we actually drilled for more oil and gas, okay, we wouldn't get it tomorrow. No one's pretending that, but it's a long, you do a kitchen extension, you don't get your kitchen tomorrow either, but you still do it because the long-term benefit is there. But they're saying there wouldn't be any benefit because we just pay for oil and gas on the world market anyway, so there'd be no benefit to us. So
So how come we are harder hit when we don't have it? How come Norway and America and other big oil producers in the Western world aren't being hard hit? How come our European allies that we're supposed to be getting so much closer to, who do produce their own oil or using coal or have got nuclear power stations every street corner like France does? How come they're not being as hard hit as us? It does. I mean, I'm sorry. Only one of these things can be true.
Well, it's because we've got politicians who haven't got a clue about economics. You know, the Norwegians, who we're buying a lot of our oil and gas from, are taking it out of the very oil wells that we can. We are paying them international currency and international rates for that.
Yep.
The profits that they're making on it, they're putting into a sovereign wealth fund.
They're taxing it.
So Norwegian people have got this massive fund of money.
4% of the world's wealth is in this tiny little country of very few,
and a lot
million
of it's
people.
come from us.
And it's come from us.
But our leader for economics can't see the economic benefit of us doing something
genuinely
similar with exactly the same oil that we could get out ourselves.
Well, that's it. So we're going to get this cost of living pain, but the reason we're getting it is because of this policy, and indeed the Tories. They're all to blame.
They're
all to blame. Let's also just talk about just about the French police failure to deal with the migrant issue. Latest videos of them standing by watching migrants climb onto dinghies. This is, by the way, after we paid an extra £16.5 million to extend by a short period those patrols by the French. I mean, this is a joke. They're not doing their job. They could easily do their job if they want to, and they choose not to. Why are we still doing this?
We should close the borders. Yeah, we should seal off the Channel Tunnel. We should become isolationist.
I'm planning to go to France in August. I'd rather you didn't do that. Thanks ever so.
No, it's the French police, like everything across France in public service, is highly unionised, and you can tell that, and their unions know that the government has got no strength whatsoever, and therefore they're playing domestic politics with what's going on.
And they want to
get
rid of the people who are there.
And they want to get rid of the people that are there, and they don't care that they're coming to England. They want them to go to the
Except
UK.
They wouldn't be travelling through France and hanging out in Calais for months on end.
If we weren't giving so many benefits to people.
Well, no, but they wouldn't be doing that if they were sent straight back.
Well, if they were sent straight back, but if France doesn't want them back, we therefore need somewhere else to send them back to. Oh, Rwanda? Could that be a possibility?
I don't care anywhere now, middle of the Atlantic Ocean as far as I'm concerned right now. Let's talk about other woes we've got. I think we're on day 3 of the doctors' strike, BMA resident doctors' strike. Interesting, I mean, we've had Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, saying that she would ban doctor strikes, minimum service requirement. That's certainly what I would do. You want to work in the public sector. It's, people are literally... It's not people being late for work because the tube drivers are on strike. We're talking about, which again, I think they're
people dying.
People dying. I'm sorry. You've chosen that job. That's the deal. I think their pay demands are absurd and frankly obscene, given where we are in the public sector and public finances. They're taking it from people who earn a hell of a lot less from them. But Wes Street and the Health Secretary he didn't say he would do it, but he did not rule out banning doctors from striking. Now, that would be quite an extraordinary thing. Easier for the Conservatives to do that than the Labour Party to do that, one would argue. But the doctors have lost a lot of support. I think we're down to like 37% support for doctors.
But they would too. But West Streeting, you brought this on yourself. We turned around and said, if you give them a big pay rise, as soon as you get in, then they're going to come back and start getting. Oh, no, they're not. And I remember him quite clearly saying before in the election, he said, all the Conservatives need to do is sit down and talk to them. And if you talk to them across the table, a deal will be done. Well, Wes, you're not doing very well at talking to them. No,
exactly, absolutely. Just finally, I want to talk about the Green Party. I don't try to do that too often, but Zach Polansky, the Green Party leader, one of his more controversial policies. I mean, I know they think that there should be a speed limit on motorways of, wait for it, 55 miles per hour, which is basically what it is in America, isn't it? Isn't it about 55 miles per hour in America on American highways?
It was for many years. A lot of American highways have now upped that to 70 miles an hour, realising that it didn't actually work. But most motorways across the UK, you can't even get up to 55 miles an hour.
You dream of getting up to 70 miles per hour. But what's so fascinating, almost 70% of voters are opposed to this policy. I mean, what are the other 30% thinking? Do they not drive on motorways? Are they those people in the slow lane? Yeah. They're there with their caravans saying, I think everyone should drive at 40. But more than 60% of Green Party voters oppose the plans. Which is, but I mean, this is absurd. The 20 mile per hour limit on main roads in London and many other many other cities around the country does my head in enough. We've seen the 20-mile-per-hour zone brought in by Labour in Wales. Hugely unpopular. And there's always this idea, you know, like some of the big, like the M25 and other big motorways, so they say, well, everyone's going to be limited to 50 miles per hour, and actually, you know, across all the lanes, less stopping and starting, and actually everyone gets there quicker. I'm still unconvinced by that, but the 20-mile-per-hour zone is just basically a money-making exercise, and people spend more of their time in a normal average family car, trying on a clear road, trying to keep to below 20. You're basically looking at your speedometer the whole time and not looking at the road. I think it's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
Teach your kids how to cross the road without looking at their phones. That'll keep kids alive. But 55 miles per hour on the motorway, that will lead to the country just slows down to a halt, doesn't it?
Well, it does, unless it's a compulsory 55 miles an hour, so that when you go around the M25, anyone who's not doing it can get fined. You have to, and therefore you get round much quicker. I'm all
in favour of a lot more policing of people driving in the middle lane.
Well, exactly.
They're in the fast lane. Exactly at 69. And people driving very slowly on the slow lane. No, get off the motorway. Get off the motorway. You've got no business being on the motorway. If you're not confident enough to
get off the motorway, get out from behind the wheel of a car. You know, there's too many incompetent drivers out there.
Absolutely.
A lot of them are driving taxis. Not in London. Taxi drivers in London are brilliant, but I come from Birmingham, and oh my God, are they bad?
You mean Ubers and the
all the little taxis. They indicators are optional.
Indicators definitely optional.
Lane discipline's optional. Obeying signs optional. Obeying traffic lights optional. It's
almost like they're cyclists. Scary. But anyway, 10:28 is time. I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. Give us a call on the 55 mile per hour limit on the motorway. Love to hear your thoughts on the microboats. But also Keir Starmer in the Gulf, hoping to apparently play some, I don't know what role he thinks he's going to play, playing the statesman, reopening the Strait of Hormuz. I'm sorry, they're not listening to you, Kim. It's just embarrassing. You're embarrassing your nation. You can't even control migrant dinghies just on his own shores. He can't even do anything about, these sanctioned oil vessels from Russia being escorted by a Russian warship just a few miles from our shores. What on earth does he think he's going to do in the Gulf? I want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:31 is the time. Let's get to your messages and your calls about Keir Starmer out in the Gulf. What on earth does he think he's doing at that? He can't control the waters around our own country. John says, the man is a pathetic fraud. God help our poor country. Paul says, imagine how embarrassed the Gulf leaders must be having to pretend to take that clown seriously. I mean, that's a fair point. Who does he think he is? Asked Joe. Jason says he's made it clear it's not his war. Time for him to go home and pay more for gas and oil. Jane says he's an embarrassment. He's a waste of space. Says Carol, this trip is spending more taxpayer money on a useless jaunt. And Andy says he's the John Terry of world politics. Oh, mwah. A wonderful line to be stolen from my Sun column tomorrow. Harry says he's trying to jump on the bandwagon, utterly pathetic. He's a laughingstock on the world stage. And Christine says, obviously they need someone to act as a doorman. Oh, he's going to, no, come on, Christine, that's rude. He's getting the biscuits. He's getting the biscuits. That's what he's doing.
Is he that competent?
You're right, I wouldn't trust him with the Garibaldi. Let's go to Andrew, who's in Dorset. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Andrew, what do you make of where we are and why Keir Starmer's there too?
Honestly, it's every time I see him, it's depressing. Suddenly turns up in the Middle East after everything's been done, and look at me, great statement. Reason for my call was you were having a great discussion with your excellent panellist about the whole Hezbollah issue. What people... For some reason, the left are in meltdown because wherever they see Israel, listen, bear in mind I'm half Palestinian, but wherever they see Israel, they go into meltdown. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're on the side of the Lebanese, but what they forget that Hezbollah is despised by the Lebanese.
Yes.
But more importantly, what they forget is Hezbollah, or as it is in Arabic, Hezbollah, which is the party of God, is a spawn or birth from the Lebanese civil war between the left, which is an amalgamation of the Muslims, Shiite Palestinians, versus the right, which was mainly the Christians and a few other ragtag, and then the Israelis, which came in. So while the Palestinians were getting defeated in Lebanon and eventually were kicked out and went to Tunisia with their tails between their legs, Hezbollah grew in the late 70s and the early 80s and are a mixture of the remainder of Palestinians plus Shia. And they keep lobbing missiles. They have been doing this now for donkeys.
Yeah. Well, have you seen, I mean, the reports, the BBC is they seem to be utterly bewildered. Why on earth would Israel be firing missiles? And it's always at Lebanon, not at Hezbollah, which is what it is.
No, that is exactly the point. They are targeting everything that Hezbollah... What Hezbollah do very well, like all these Hamas, Houthi lunatics, is they use the civilian infrastructure intentionally. But what the Lebanese want to do... Lebanon is a mixture, 43% Christian, the rest Muslim. But, and of course, by law, they have to have a prime minister who's Christian, President Lebanese. They've had enough with Hezbollah, but they're so powerful. It is quite incredible.
Yeah, Hezbollah, it's a bigger army. It's a bigger army than the Lebanese army. I mean, again, Israel's doing them a favour, and they're not targeting civilians. We know that. I'm going to have to leave it. I've got to get to a break. But Andrew, thank you very much for... Again, I love how unbelievably well informed our audience is. Thank you very much indeed. 10:35 is the time. Up next, talk to somebody who's very well informed. Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked Online. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's get straight to my next guest, Brendan O'Neill. He's chief political writer at Spiked Online, and talk about, well, what on earth's going on in the world. Very good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia.
Lots of talk about breaches of this ceasefire with 10-point plans and 15-point plans, none of which seem to actually tally with each other. Claims that this side or that side has breached the ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz is still not open. Keir Starmer's in the Gulf, apparently trying to play his role. No one's quite sure what he's doing, other than perhaps, bringing the biscuits for the meeting. What do you make of what's going on?
I mean, it's a bit messy, isn't it? It's pretty clear that the ceasefire, such as it exists, is not going to hold for very long. But, the thing that worries me, Julia, which you guys have been touching on already, is just the amount of misinformation we are being subjected to on an hourly basis every single day. I mean, particularly in relation to the Lebanon crisis, because as your caller was saying just there, the idea that Israel is just, like a lunatic bombing Lebanon for fun is complete claptrap. Hezbollah has fired tens of thousands of missiles at Israel over the past 2.5 years. It's killed loads of people, including 12 children who are playing a game of football. It has massacred Israelis. It has caused 60,000 Israelis to leave their homes and their towns. There is not one nation on earth that would put up with such a barrage of missiles and do nothing about it. So when the BBC and the left and everyone else tells us what Israel is doing, but doesn't tell us what Hezbollah is doing, they are lying by omission, and we should be aware of that.
And as my esteemed guest Philip Ingram has pointed out a little bit earlier on the show, these guys aren't resistance fighters. They're not freedom fighters. They are basic. They're drug, they're drug dealers and people smugglers, and including the biggest smugglers of children for sex in the Middle East and around the world. I mean, they ain't nice guys. Let's stop pretending that they are fighting for a cause.
They're not nice guys, and they are bigots and racists and anti-Semites. Hezbollah is an army of anti-Semites, the same way that Hamas is, and the same way that the mullahs of Tehran are as well. And, for leftists in Britain and Europe and America to either sing the praises of Hezbollah or at least make apologies for it is outrageous. This is a self-styled party of God that says it wants to cut the cancer of Jews out of the Middle East. So they are openly, like when NECAP and others allegedly praise a group like this, they are praising a movement that is, if anything, quite fascistic in its hatred and its ideology and its religious hysteria. So we've got to get real about these movements. And in my view, Israel has every right to try and put down this movement, this organization that causes such a serious threat to its security.
And as you say, there's no other nation in the world that wouldn't respond the same way. Indeed, the same with Israel or with Gaza, other than the fact, of course, they're actually behaving in a rather different way from many Western governments and how they would behave in terms of they're not targeting civilians and their ability to keep civilian death counts down. Let's talk about our Prime Minister's role. Vladimir Putin's putting two fingers up to Keir Starmer with a Russian, two Russian oil vessels that have been sanctioned, followed by a Russian warship in the Channel. We're doing nothing about that, doing nothing about the Channel dinghies. But apparently he's going to play an instrumental role in reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and he's out in the Gulf on a 2 or 3 day trip. And we're told that Number 10 apparently think that they can sort of remarket him after all his failures at home as sort of a statesman abroad. How do you think that's working?
I've got a feeling this is not going to work out as they planned. I mean, it's beyond ridiculous. I didn't think Starmer could get any more ridiculous, but I've been proven wrong by this latest escapade he's on. I mean, it's almost too pathetic for words, but the idea, he can't even control the English Channel. Yep. He can't even stop small boats getting across from France, hundreds of men turning up every week uninvited to our country. The idea that he's going to fix the Straits of Hormuz and, a piece of land and sea thousands of miles away is absolutely laughable. So he's a joke. And even worse than that, it's like, that coward in a pub fight who kind of sits out while the fight is happening and then turns up at the end and says, is everyone okay? That's basically what he's doing. He sat out of this conflict, this great geopolitical emergency, this war between Israel, our ally, America, our ally, and the Islamic Republic. He just sat it out, didn't say anything of any worth whatsoever. And now he's turning up in the region after the fact to try and look good. I think it's incredibly cynical, and it will blow back on him.
Except, of course, actually, as Philip Ingram has pointed out, Britain did play a bigger role than perhaps he wants a lot of potential Labour voters in local elections to know that we did, and credit to us, credit to the brave men and women, flying those jets, shooting down missiles and drones from protecting our Gulf allies. But in terms of where this goes, we're still facing a cost of living crisis here. We are, uniquely, according to the OECD and the IMF, according to their analysts, going to be impacted in the Western world by the cost of diesel going up, of oil going up, of gas going up, of air, jet fuel, fertilizer, you name it, mainly because we are largely an importer of those things and we don't produce it ourselves. And this is all going to be blamed on this awful war. But and I know, we've discussed this many a time, an awful lot of this is down to domestic policy, energy policy, economic policy back at home, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason we are susceptible to a shock like this war is precisely because of the mismanagement of our energy and our economy by successive governments, in fact, all of which have bowed down to the net zero ideology, which I've often referred to as a suicidal policy, because it encourages us to wind down our energy industry while other nations around the world can ramp theirs up.
Yep.
So it's a ludicrous policy, and it's put us in a very weak position when it comes to energy and when it comes to being energy independent. So they've left us open to shocks like this. And I hope that when they go knocking on doors in the run up to 7th of May and say, listen, this war has caused you lots of troubles, we're going to try and trim your bills a bit, I hope a lot of people slam the door in their faces and remind them that their own net zero policy, their own Ed Miliband, has signed the death warrant of Britain's energy industry, and that's the problem.
Yeah, but we'd still be in this mess even if they changed that policy right now, simply because of the Tories' policies. And again, I'm not letting them get off scot-free on that front, and every Lib Dems, all of them supporting it. In terms of where we are with Donald Trump and our international relations, I think most of us, even those who've not got Trump derangement syndrome and who want Trump to succeed against the mullahs, alarmed, I must say, by how many people who would rather that the Tehran regime wins against America and Israel. That's quite terrifying, I think. They're exactly the same as the people who seem to think that it was a good thing that Hamas should win against Israel in that war. But in terms of what he's been saying in recent weeks, the bombastic language, the threats to end civilization, the threats to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age, all of that, we all went to bed the other night thinking, well, you never know, God knows what's going to happen by the morning. Woke up and thank goodness there's been a deal of some sort, however well that ceasefire holds. Do you think America has pulled back from the brink, and do you think that Donald Trump can be trusted to do a deal that will leave the world and the Middle East and the Iranian people in a better place in the future than they were 6 weeks ago?
The problem we face at the moment is that we've got Trump derangement syndrome on one side and Trump devotion syndrome on the other, and neither side really wants to have an honest discussion about this president. Some of the things he does are really bad, and I would say that includes some of the language he's been using over the past few days in particular, which has been incredibly unpresidential, very threatening, quite ominous at times, threatening to destroy a whole nation. This is not good. This is not how politics should be done. And I know that in wartime, we tend to ramp up the rhetoric.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's hardly, Churchill said, we'll fight them on the beaches. At least that was inspiring. This is just a little bit pathetic. But, the other thing that strikes me, Julia, is the stunning hypocrisy of the left, because these are people who've been on the streets every day, every weekend for 2.5 years, openly calling for the destruction of Israel, all the way from the river to the sea, by intifada if necessary, which means violence. They've been doing that every weekend, openly saying it doesn't have a right to exist, it should no longer exist. And then they throw their toys out of the pram.
Clutch their pearls.
Similar about Iran. At least Trump was bluffing. I don't think we can say the same about these people who want to destroy Israel.
No, very interesting. Just finally, you talk about divisions on our streets. Certainly that's a big dividing line for a lot of people. But according to a latest poll, people now believe that Britain is more divided now than it was at the time of the Brexit referendum in 2016. More than 3/4 of voters and a majority of all social groups think the country is more fractured than a decade ago. The country is split by identity, by age, by geography and by political views, and it's a poll of almost 5,000 people across the country, and says the public shows basically they feel let down by national institutions, including the government, the BBC. 2/3 of voters think politics in Britain is broken and that no one knows how to fix Britain. That is a miserable and sorry state of affairs, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fascinating survey, and it all rings true to me. When I speak to people, they do feel that the country is fractured. They do feel the BBC can't be trusted in the way that we might have trusted it a few decades back. They do feel these things very strongly. But, I'm not particularly surprised, because one of the great things about Brexit, in my view, is not that it solved the divisions in Britain, but it brought them to the surface.
Yes.
Let us know that there are huge divides. We weren't all happy, clappy, third way, pro-mass immigration liberals. That was not true. Politics might have been stuffed with people like that, but there were millions of people in the country who want sovereignty to be restored. They want our borders to be policed. They want wokeness to be put to bed, and they want common sense to come back.
Yeah.
Brexit reminded us that those people exist, but they're still fighting to be heard. Yeah. And I hope they will be heard in the election.
I would say the big dividing line is between the sane and the insane. I think it's as simple as that. 10:47 is the time. Brendan O'Neill, great to talk to you, geopolitical writer at Spiked Online. Philip Ingram, quick word on that.
Well, the sane and insane, if 2/3 think Britain is more fractured, then the insane is the 1/3 that think it isn't.
Yeah. I mean, I would say most of that divide wasn't from 2016. That divide was from 2016 to 2019, when people like our current Prime Minister fought to stop the biggest democratic vote for anything from being enacted. That's on you guys. First up, though, before we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to be talking about families who've been bereaved and victims getting more time to challenge a sentence if they think the judge has been too lenient, and far too often they are. We are giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000, completely tax-free, here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Here's how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Very good luck with that. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk right now about, what happens when a judge gives a sentence at a crime when you're the victim or your loved one has been the victim and you think that, frankly, it's not good enough. Well, victims and bereaved families will be given more time to challenge the sentence if they think the judge was too lenient. Current laws, they have just 28 days, less than a month, to submit a request to review a prison term. But from now on, they are going to get, as part of a major justice shake-up, 6 months to challenge that sentence. Well, let's talk about this with Sir Michael Ellis KC. He's a barrister. He's also a former Conservative MP and former Attorney General. A very good morning to you, Sir Michael.
Hello, Julia. Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Well, this was announced by the Solicitor General, Ellie Reeves, yes, a relation to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. And she said she's upping the time to 6 months. She says to build a justice system that finally works for victims. I'm surprised 28 days seem to me to be very short, especially for families who are grieving, who perhaps are in shock and, needing to, get the wherewithal, get a lawyer and the like, and quite shocked. But what difference will this make?
Well, it will make quite a difference, I think. This is a scheme that was set up in 1989 because for generations we'd had a situation in the criminal justice system where if defendants felt that their sentence was too long, they could appeal the sentence as manifestly excessive. But there was no mechanism to appeal a sentence that was too short. And so it was set up in 1989. It's worked pretty well, but a large number of people haven't known that it's existed. And they set it up with a 28-day time limit because they felt that defendants also had the right to have a finality of their sentence and shouldn't be kept sort of waiting.
Yeah, but there has to be a time limit, yes.
There has to be a time limit. And frankly, they were starting to struggle with the bureaucracy of the number of appeals coming in and achieving, the sort of process within the 28 days.
So this is just a bureaucratic failing that has led to this, and they're playing it as an act of kindness to victims.
I think that's part of the. I noticed that they quietly also increased the length of time for officials to work on these cases from 28 days to an extra 14 days.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a little bit of that. But look, this is generally a positive thing. I wonder, though, whether they've thought through all of the issues on increasing it to 6 months. Because, first of all, if you're only allowing victims and their families rather than members of the public to appeal after 1 month, then that might start to put pressure in some big cases, some cause célèbres, some really important cases which get national attention. Then the families and the victims might get under pressure themselves to do something and to make this process start to happen when members of the public can't. So it might have that unintended consequence.
Putting more pressure on them. But how often does this actually happen in terms of appeals? Because we see some big cases that come in the news. There'll be a small minority of cases where let's face it, a lot of us are shocked either by the harsh sentence handed down to somebody who we think, frankly, should not have gone to prison or perhaps even been arrested for something they've written on social media, and then unbelievably low sentences. Certainly compared to, we all used to watching sentencing in America, grooming gangs getting 14 years and serving 6. And you're thinking, so 14 years, they're not even serving a week for each rape they've committed. And a lot of, the concurrent sentencing for people who've committed crimes, repeat crimes again and again. A lot of us do feel that actually there are a lot of crimes where, frankly, you got convicted, we put you in and we throw away the key.
Yeah. Well, actually, Julia, to take your point, there are very few successful appeals on an unduly lenient sentence. I mean, actually, the sentence has to be, to meet the criteria for this scheme, it has to not just be lenient, but really unduly lenient. So not just low,
totally
just
inappropriate,
just totally out of
and that would have to be outside the sort of the guardrails, because there are sort of recommended sentencing guidelines, aren't there?
There are guidelines, and we do account for sort of severe judges and lenient judges, but this has to go beyond even what a lenient judge might give. It has to be just below what the higher courts have ruled. One of the issues about this, though, is that, and by increasing it to 6 months, again, this is possibly an unintended consequence, because this government isn't famous for its competence when it comes to the criminal justice system, never mind anything else. One of the things they may not have thought about is, if you take 6 months to register an appeal on a low sentence, so a sentence that perhaps is 2 or 3 years, instead of, you think it should have been 4 or 5 years, it may be by the time you take 6 months to appeal it, and then it takes another 6 months to actually get before the Court of Appeal judges, you might find that the defendant has been released and served the sentence before the Court of Appeal can actually deal with it.
Serve the laughably small proportion of the sentence. I think for me, the number one thing I want is that the sentence that someone is given in court is what they serve, full stop. I do not understand. I get a maximum I'll allow 10% off for very good behaviour. But even then, I would expect good behaviour, and you get punished for not showing good behaviour. I think that's the thing that most people feel is unduly lenient.
Well, this government is increasing. It's doing the opposite of that, Julia. They're increasing the amount of time people don't have to serve in prison.
That said, your lot didn't build enough prisons, so it rings about. You're all to blame. And there's one thing I remember saying to David Cameron personally in my studio once. Seriously, when I was in a radio studio with him, he said, "Well, if you want more prisons, you have to put taxes up." I said, "Fine by me." Did a poll with my audience, and everyone was saying we are more than happy to pay more taxes to build more prisons.
It's true that there's been an underinvestment in the prison system. But we've got very good officials actually in the Attorney General's office, but we haven't got the investment. You're right, for the last 30 or 40 years, there have been no votes in putting money into the prison.
And it's crazy, because there definitely aren't any votes in having more criminals on the streets. So, Michael Ellis, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, former Attorney General Philip Ingram.
Yeah, it's symptomatic of the criminal justice system that has been disaster for years and years and years, completely underinvested in. It needs a complete revamp, and it needs big investment. It's another thing the Chancellor...
It is an investment. It's not current spending. It is an investment, getting people off the streets and deterring people, and telling people that if you're going to get under a year of a sentence, if you're assuming you get caught, assuming you get prosecuted, assuming you get done, that you're not going to go to prison. I mean, we've got a free-for-all. There's no point arresting anybody anymore. Absolute free-for-all.
And decisions need to be made. The Chancellor needs to take decisions, not
you can put my taxes up for that any day of the week. Why don't you get all those people who are paying benefits to stop building prisons? That'd be more useful, wouldn't it? Oh, by the way, the Green Party are launching their local election campaign right now. Don't worry, Zach Polanski hasn't started dancing yet. Plenty more to come. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's just fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. If you missed anything of the show so far, we're on all the way till 1 o'clock. You do go to my YouTube page. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Easy to find. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more on what on earth is going on in the Middle East. We actually got a news conference by the Defence Secretary John Healey right now. I'll tell you what he has to say. As the Prime Minister is out in the Gulf, apparently he's arrived in the United Arab Emirates today. I mean, no idea what he's doing out there, but apparently he's going to be helping to, you know, broker this deal and push for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. I assume at the meetings he is just handing round the biscuits. I'm not sure we trust him with a hot kettle to pour the tea. But also polling is showing that Britain is more divided now than at the time of the Brexit referendum in 2016. We're also going to be talking about Ed Miliband approving Britain's biggest solar farm. It's about objections from nearby residents, because it's all in the name of net zero, and therefore it is goodness. Delighted to say that joining me for today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning to you.
Morning
lots
again.
Of compliments from callers already today. They're liking you today.
Yeah, it's costing me a lot of money. I have to send them all on Fiverr.
Absolutely. But we've been talking about, you know, where we are. I mean, it's one of those things where 4 paragraphs in, you're explaining where we are today. But let me just put the question to our audience and we'll give the background. But I want you to get in touch, because Keir Starmer is out in the Gulf today. He's arrived yesterday. He's hoping to help broker the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Lots of people are pointing out, you know, he's basically trying to do a Hugh Grant playing, you know, a Tony Blair-like figure, and he thinks he's going to be rebranded as some sort of great world statesman. I'm sorry, we have no hard power and no soft power at this point. Yes, some of our fantastically brave men and women have been flying those jets, shooting down missiles and drones in the Middle East fired by Iran, and we have been playing that defensive role. But basically, when the US came a-calling, and you can agree or disagree with Donald Trump, basically we were lacking. We don't actually have the ability to do anything to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. We don't indeed have the ability to even control the channel, which is right next to us, because we've seen, you know, yet again, more hundreds and hundreds of migrants arriving every day on those channel dinghies. We've had 4 deaths yesterday, or in the last 24 hours on those dinghies, people supposedly fleeing the very safe country of France. French not agreeing to do pretty much anything to try and stop those dinghies, despite us paying more millions of pounds to them. He can't control the channel dinghies. He can't even control 2 oil tankers, which are part of the sanctioned fleet of Russian tankers carrying oil illegally through the channel, escorted by a Russian warship, I kid you not, with a British naval vessel following behind, doing absolutely nothing about it. Only a few weeks after our own Prime Minister, Mr. Great Statesman, said that we were going to be seizing those vessels because they are in breach of the sanctions involved in the Ukraine war. I mean, genuinely, we are a laughing stock on the world stage, thanks to our Prime Minister, who talks the talk but cannot and refuses to walk the walk. I want to know your reaction to all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. Philip, now, you've been involved in military, you know, you've fought in wars, you understand what's going on behind the scenes. First of all, just talking about Keir Starmer, do we have any role at all in brokering a peace, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, or anything at all?
To be able to broker a deal, you need to have a relationship with both sides that are there. So we know he's broken his relationship with the Americans. The UK still has a good standing with Middle East countries because we're helping to defend a lot of those, so that's good. But you would also need a good standing and an understanding and trust from the Iranians as well. The Iranians hate 3 countries: the United States, Israel, and the United Kingdom.
I've got to be honest, I'm proud to be on that list.
And oh yes, and of the 3 of them, they probably hate the United Kingdom and blame a lot of what's gone on from a historical perspective in Iran and a lot of the issues that there are when Iran was created on the UK.
It was the Brits who drew the lines in the sand.
And it was the Brits that helped enable the State of Israel to be created. And the Brits, Americans and Brits are exactly the same. So for him to go there and say he's going to broker anything with the Iranians, especially the regime that's in at the minute, he hasn't got a hope in hell. So he's lying to us again.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. By the way, the Defence Secretary John Healey has just, in his press statement at number 10, has just said, I'm making the... He does talk in a rather pompous way. I know a lot of people are quite big fans of him. I think he's a bit pompous. I'm making this statement to call out this Russian activity. It's about this Russian warship. And keep your hats on, people.
Oh.
Don't be drinking tea while I'm saying this, because you will splutter it out. I'm making this statement to call out this Russian activity. To President Putin, I say, we see you. Oh, he's quaking in his boots, isn't he? We see your activity over our cables and pipelines, and you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences. It's embarrassing.
Serious consequences. It's been reminded to me, and it's been on my list.
You're going to expel a diplomat.
You know the Royal Navy ship that is supposed to be escorting it through.
You told me this in the break, and it's really upset me. Yeah, so we've got a Russian warship, which they do this quite often. Yeah. It's going through the channel, escorting these two naval vessels, but two fingers up to the British, going, "What are you going to do about it, Governor?"
And it's being shadowed by a British ship.
And this British ship is a top warship that could absolutely seize these vessels. It could shoot down that. You could shoot that Russian warship into the bottom of the sea, couldn't it?
No, it's a Royal Fleet Auxiliary. It's not even manned by Royal Navy personnel.
Tell me about the ship. Tell me.
And it is carrying cornflakes and bacon sandwich resupplies from me because I'm the bacon sandwich king. It's a resupply ship. It's Tesco's on the seas, or Aldi on the seas, or other supermarkets are available for the Royal Navy. That's it.
It's just embarrassing. Thing is, we've got our budget like 60 billion on our defences. I know there's a hell of a lot that goes on Trident, and that's an extra cost that a lot of other countries that aren't nuclear powers don't have, and I'm glad we've got it. But where the hell does all the money go?
That is a fantastic question, and this is a $64 trillion question, and that is what the government needs to address, because the Ministry of Defence is terrible at wasting our money. Yeah. Project after project after project gets wasted, and that's why we've got billions of money just being splashed up against the wall.
Yeah, and again, we never it arrives late, it arrives three times as much, and then often it's obsolete or it doesn't work. Yeah. Let's go back to the specifics of what's going on in relation to the ceasefire, because we've got these ceasefire talks starting tomorrow, led by JD Vance, the US Vice President in the Middle East. And we've got both the Iranians and the Americans saying the other side is breaching the ceasefire. We've had there was definitely some sort of an attack on Iranian territory. There have been some reaction attacks on other Gulf states, although interestingly not on US air bases in the Middle East. We've also seen the continuation of and massive escalation of Israeli attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. Please don't listen to the BBC telling you these are attacks on Lebanon. They're not on Lebanon. Lebanon is under a siege and under attack by Hezbollah, terrorist, evil, fascist, nihilistic organisation that has turned what was once, basically Beirut was the Paris on the Med, wasn't it, in the Middle East, into just absolute hell on earth because of their control of that area. But the claim from the Iranians is that the Lebanon and the attacks on Lebanon by Israel, which are clearly defensive, if you pay attention, but not the BBC who doesn't, that is a breach of the ceasefire deals. The Americans say no, Lebanon wasn't included. The Pakistanis who brokered the deal say it was included. JD Vance has said this is a misunderstanding, an understandable misunderstanding, he says, by the Iranians. I mean, we don't know where we are. I can't believe that Netanyahu would have ever agreed to that deal.
He wouldn't have done. No, the war between Israel and Hezbollah is different, and it's Israel and Hezbollah, not Israel and Lebanon, because the Lebanese military are not getting involved in it whatsoever. And you're putting this into context and international legal context. United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which builds on UNSCR 1559 and 1680, all called for Hezbollah and all armed groups in Lebanon to be disbanded.
And to stop firing missiles at Israel.
Well, and therefore to stop. There was a United Nations force put into southern Lebanon to bring to oversee that and bring protection. They have not been disbanded. disbanded.
Yeah.
And therefore, Israel actually is acting in conjunction with United Nations Security Council resolutions. So it's got a legal basis to do what it's doing from the international community.
And there is no country in the world, just as after the Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023, just as with the Hezbollah attacks were started the next day, and they have been going on for many years already, and some 60,000 Israelis having to be removed, basically away from their homes in northern Israel because it simply wasn't safe. There is no country in the world that would put up with a terrorist organisation like that on their border, firing rockets into their country and go, that's fine, you carry on. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. Well, no, I don't know. We probably would put up with it because we apparently don't bother actually acting. I mean,
we wouldn't put up with it. We just wouldn't be able to make a decision, and it would just happen.
I'm going. Keir Starmer will be sitting on the fence. Defence Secretary John Healey at this press conference, he's just said that the UK and its allies have monitored a Russian attack submarine and 2 spy submarines in the North Atlantic for a month before they retreated. So you monitored them while they basically spied on where our cables are. Spied on where our communication cables, our satellite, our links, our links, fuel cables, and everything else. They mapped them all out, and then they've done their job and left, and we're supposed to think that's fine.
He's a bit stronger ground there because it's our Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft that flying out of RAF Lossiemouth that will have been monitoring them. Now, they've got the ability to then actively say to those submarines, we know you're there by pinging them with sonar. They also carry weapons that they can drop on those submarines if necessary and blow them out of the water.
But presumably those submarines are able to, they're allowed to, the Atlantic is an ocean, it's not controlled by anybody.
And
they can go wherever they want.
Yeah, international law allows them to go wherever they want, but we have had our Poseidons flying up because I've been monitoring them on a lot of the flight radar stuff going up, and will be part of an international organisation that's a group of aircraft doing this, and they will be turning around to them saying, we know where you are.
So what though?
Because that then disrupts their activities that they want to do. We can track them. They can't go and do the intelligence gathering that they want to do without their paths being compromised. So we've got control of them in a much better way with something with weapons on it than we have over the warship going through the channel.
In terms of where we are, going back to the Middle East, again, we're still got our own spheres of influence we can't even control. Do you think we are going to see a permanent ceasefire? Do you think we will see the Strait of Hormuz open? But given that the Iranians, the 10-point plan for the Iranians, we were reading out and laughing out loud yesterday, very different from the 15-point plan from the Americans. Obviously, they're going to have to, most of that would be totally unacceptable. And Donald Trump will be a laughing stock if he agreed to even, I think, 3 of the points, let alone all 10 of the Iranian talking points. But he does seem to be sort of not having an issue with charging vessels for getting through the Strait of Hormuz. And we're looking at $2 million a barrel. And when people say, who's going to pay that? Well, us. I mean, the consumers are going to pay that. Every single thing we buy is going to go up in value. And it's going to set a terrible precedent for some of these key straits of Malacca as well, over further in the east. All these key straits where basically, it's very important that there is free passage of trade vessels.
No. Are we going to say...
let's start charging to go through the channel.
Are we going to say a ceasefire? I've got a very long, convoluted and detailed answer to that. No. It's against international law of the sea to start charging for passage through different straits. And you're 100% right. If the Iranians are going to do it, we should do it in the Channel. We can share the revenue with the French, and we can then charge extra for these smuggling gangs to get people into the UK. And Rachel Reeves is going to be sitting there smiling all the way to her bank.
Yeah, we can make some serious dosh then, couldn't we? We've seen with the cost of living impact, and this is just at the pump so far, which we're really seeing it. Obviously, diesel has gone up by 50p a litre since this conflict began 6 weeks ago, to £1.90. But actually, it's going to be it's over £2 a litre if you're at a motorway or service station somewhere where you haven't really got a choice about what you pay. Petrol is up 30 pence a litre. It's only going one way for now. And even if we did have this full ceasefire, even if the Strait of Hormuz is opened within days and stays open, and without charging vessels, we are still looking at the impact of that 6-week closure being felt in the months ahead, aren't we?
The organisation that's making the biggest profit out of this? It's Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves could take 10 to 15 pence a litre off that tomorrow.
Because there's fuel duty and then there's VAT on the fuel duty.
She could suspend VAT for the period of time for the crisis and send a clear message out of the country that she's interested in it. But she's not. She's raking in billions and billions of pounds more money.
The argument they're making, I think it was 20 million a day a few weeks back, well, at least last week.
I'll take that.
However, the argument from the Treasury is, but we're paying more on our interest on our debts. And that's covering that. So we're basically
but that's because of economic policies. That's because of her policies, putting the bond rates up. It's nothing to do with anything else.
I don't speak for the Treasury. I'm just saying.
She could turn around and help the average voting public by cutting, temporarily freezing VAT on fuel, and that would bring the price down.
Well, I mean, look, we're not going to get rid of that cost of living pain anytime soon.
No.
And thanks very much for that one. But again, should we have expected at some point, look, if you're going to take on a power like Iran that is a threat to the Middle East and a threat to the rest of the world, and it is, and if you think the cost of of this war and the damage and the cost of living impact is big, imagine what it would be like if they set off a nuclear weapon. That's the reality. You've got to face the actual reality. Or they already had a nuclear weapon and just said, but we will, and then they held the rest of the world to ransom for the oil in the Strait of Hormuz, and there was nothing anyone could do about it because they would fire the nuclear weapon. And you couldn't trust them not to fire a nuclear weapon because they're insane religious nutters.
Yeah, and we were at the table able to influence Donald Trump and whisper in his ear and say, maybe you do that slightly differently, or maybe you do this, maybe you do that, until we flip-flopped and said, oh, you can't use RAF Fairford, you can't use Diego Garcia for 48 hours, and then change our mind. We were kicked off the table then, and we've got no influence whatsoever, because you can see that in Donald Trump's personal language at Starmer. He doesn't hate the UK. There's still a working level relationship going on. It's now personal, so it's political.
Do you think that King Charles going over in a matter of weeks, that's going to help? I mean, certainly by the time that was organised, cancelling it would have been a terrible thing to do diplomatically.
No. Hugely help. There's one person that can bring this back on again and get us in it, and hopefully Starmer goes, because the relationship with him will never come back. But His Majesty is the one person that can sit there and make sure that we are properly back at the table and whisper things in Donald Trump's ear, and Donald Trump will listen to him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the. I mean, it's not often I feel sorry for Keir Starmer. You wanted the job, mate. I do think that of all the presidents to have to deal with, Donald Trump is the hardest, because he is incredibly, but he's incredibly mercurial. You can't predict, and I know people say that's one of his strengths, but it's also one of the things that makes him impossible to do with. I mean, he's been slacking off NATO and NATO allies today after meeting with Mark Rutte, who was basically appointed as the NATO General Secretary because he is basically the Trump whisperer. Yeah. And he's a player.
But Donald Trump has slagged them off. But you'll find that over the coming days, Trump's rhetoric will then ease off and ease off.
Threats to Greenland.
But that's just Trumpisms. Mark Rutte is playing Trump properly. Starmer needs to play Trump. He doesn't need to play his own game for the British voting public, because the British voting public are going to suffer more if he doesn't play Trump.
Let's also talk about the Green Party. They've just launched their behave. They've just launched their local election campaign, much later than actually the other parties. I don't know exactly. That was busy dancing. I don't know, waving Palestinian flags. Speaking at their local election launch, he said it's outrageous that Israel. Again, it's local elections, mate. It's outrageous. This is the thing that really bothers me. Even on local elections, so it should be about bins.
No. The potholes are down to the Israelis. I'm sorry, it's the Israelis' fault.
I think you'll find it. They're down to the Zionist entity. I think that's the phrase they like to use. Yes. But again, the fact that any of our elections should be about Gaza, but the fact that local elections should be about what's going on in the Middle East, I find utterly bizarre. But that's where we are with demographic changes we've seen, the soundbite politics, and a lot of young people getting their politics from TikTok. That's your issue. Because Zabalasky said this morning, it's outrageous that Israel is still enjoying diplomatic and trade privileges from the international community. And as a Green Party, we are calling on this government to make much more robust sanctions to withdraw the UK-Israel trade agreement and to end the genocide. There never was a genocide. What genocide does he think is happening right now?
Well, I don't know.
Does he know what the word means? Where is the genocide happening right now? Other than it's been happening on the streets of Iran, carried out by the Iranian regime, who he apparently is quite keen on, it would seem.
As a gay Jew, I would love him to go and visit Tehran, and let's see how long he lasts.
Yeah, it's just, I really hate also this when the Green Party people play that sort of, but he's Jewish, he's gay, he's obviously, you think, Yeah, well, then you'd think you would understand. But I'm neither gay nor Jewish, but I can still see between right and wrong and evil and good. He also says what we need to do is disentangle the UK military and the US military, ban the US from using our airspaces, and do exactly what other European allies like Pedro Sanchez in Spain have done, and say this war is not in our name. We want nothing to do with it. I mean, thing is, that's going to be really popular with a lot of people on the doorstep, because they're under the illusion that you could. Well, again, people are under the illusion that move closer to Europe, and again, there's anti-Brexit and all of that. So who's going to protect us? We have one serious ally in this world, and it's America. And that's the end of the matter. There is nothing else to discuss.
Put NATO to one side. There's the Five Eyes community, which is a much closer relationship. That's US. UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, but it's more
the Anglosphere.
It's more 2 + 3 eyes. So it's UK and US and the others. Those are the bits that work together much more closely from a military perspective, from an intelligence perspective, from a security perspective, and keep us safe and secure. NATO then helps and comes in. We can't do this in isolation without our taxes going through the roof and us having to spend huge amounts more to build up our woefully poor defence at the minute.
Give us a call on all the songs we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Lots of calls on the board. Get to some of your messages as well. And then up soon we are going to be going to talk to James Mathewson, a former Labour Party spokesman, and also talking to Ross Clark about Ed Miliband, who just basically riding roughshod over local people's objections and building a massive solar farm. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:26 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls and your texts. Been asking you about Keir Starmer in the Gulf, hoping to help broker the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, or I don't know, hand round the biscuits at the meeting that other people are having. Meanwhile, he can't even control migrant dinghies coming across every single day, and even Russian warships into the Channel, putting two fingers up to us as they escort basically sanctioned oil vessels, even though he said he was going to basically seize those vessels. Well, we're not. I mean, frankly, it's a laughing It makes us a laughing stock, it really does. Some of your messages coming in thick and fast on this. Alex says Keir Starmer's completely irrelevant. Eddie says the bomb stopped falling and Starmer takes action. What a loser. Tammy says if I ran a country in the Gulf, I'd tell Starmer to pack up Britain's military bases and take every last man with him. They could be used for actual allies who will protect them. No, to be fair, we have been doing protective defensive work, brave men and women in the Air Force and others, significant, as Philip Ingram says, shooting down missiles. So that we've done defensive work. That is not true. And Dale says, what happened to a phone or a Zoom call? Well, yeah, so much greener, isn't it? So much greener. Anyway, let's go to Michael. He's on the line in Hertfordshire. Hello, Michael. What do you want to say?
Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed. Lovely to speak to you.
Good. Big mistake having a ceasefire.
Oh, OK.
Big mistake. Let them off the hook. They're only regroup and start again.
Yeah.
And might I add, the BBC lady that commented of the massacre in Lebanon today is an insult to reporting.
Oh, yeah. That's least you said, wasn't it? Yeah.
30,000 of your own people. Defending yourself is not a massacre.
No.
And they've got it wrong again.
No, they also often talk about the number of deaths. And I'm like, well, I know, but how many of those were Hezbollah terrorists? That's what's relevant.
Yeah, well, they don't mention that. It's only massacre and people being killed.
Yeah.
And they forget that not Lebanon, let's rephrase that, Hezbollah attacked Israel
first.
Thank you.
Exactly. It's a defensive war. It's unbelievable.
What you said already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
No, I don't know. No, Michael, I'm not going to let you go. Why do you think the ceasefire is a mistake? You say Iran are going to regroup. They're going to start again. But what, we just carry on? I mean, how far does America and Israel have to go to...
Do they really want a ceasefire? You've seen what's happened. Now they want to start charging for boats to go through the strait. They say that it now belongs to them, which is against international law. Well, they use international law when it suits them.
Yeah.
This international law is meaningless. People use it when they want to use it for their own use and go against it when it's not in their favour.
You think Trump's being played?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Trump's getting a lot of pressure to get away and finish this up. If he had some backing from his allies, which he had, by the way, from his own Arab allies and British Arab allies, but not Britain and NATO, they wanted... The Arab countries themselves want to finish off Iran. It's just a shame innocent people are going to get killed.
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. But whose fault was that? Yeah. Michael, thank you for your time. Thanks for that call. Phil is in London and wants to have his say. Phil, what do you want to tell us?
Hi. Julia, we had a bit of a ding-dong a little while ago. But anyway, if you want a bigger navy, then you have to have a bigger public sector, which should be more taxes.
Phil, can I stop you a second? Your phone's going in and out. Are you on speakerphone or...?
Oh, OK. Is that any better?
I think so.
Is that any better?
That's a bit better. Yes, that's better now. Okay, right, then it's more consistent. Thank you.
If you want a bigger navy or a bigger military, then you're going to need more taxes because you're going to have a public sector. So you're going to have to be shifting resources away from the private sector.
No, you could just cut the welfare bill.
Well, then what do you cut the welfare pensions in that?
Well, I know. I'm working age people swinging the lead.
Pensions in there, though.
Pensions is the biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you have to cut. So if you look at that, so anyway, you'd be diverting resources from the private sector, like men, steel, and all this other stuff, making boats, as they did in the Second World War, when they had to raise taxes, because that's what you want. If you want a bigger, that's the reason why we had a big public sector in the 70s, because coming out of the post-World War II. In regards to Starmer, I mean, Starmer can't do much because your friend, both your friends, Netanyahu and Trump, have actually kiboshed the global economy. And I'll tell you what, Julie, your listeners are going to go through severe pain.
Yeah.
Absolutely severe pain in the next couple of months, over the next couple of years. And they will go through pain, and their kids will go through pain as well. All because Netanyahu wants to expand Israel.
What do you mean expand Israel? Israel has no intention of expanding Israel.
We've heard US politicians saying about from the... the great expansion anyway, from the Nile to
from the river to the sea.
Yeah,
that's Palestinian expansionism.
But the Israeli ambassador, the US ambassador, actually said that as well. We wouldn't have a problem when he talked to Tucker Carlson.
Mate, don't be listening to Tucker Carlson or any of his guests.
What I'm saying is, Julia, your listeners who are going about Starmer having to get involved and Trump continuing, if Trump bombs Iran will take out all the desalination plants. They will take out all the energy, and that's it. Game over.
Yeah, no, there's no that, and that's been the issue all along, and Iran has made that very clear that some of their bombing targets. But it's not if America has been bombing. But here's the thing: you say Netanyahu's this. Sorry, Israel has made peace with every neighbour that says we're not going to, basically. Try to cause your destruction and annihilate you and kill every person in the country. They've made peace with Gulf state after Gulf state after Gulf state. After every war they've offered peace deals and territory and things. Nothing is going to make the Iranians, Hamas or Hezbollah or Houthis happy other than the destruction of every Jew and the state of Israel. They're not prepared to give that to them. That's their apparent wrongdoing in the Middle East. The reality is, Tehran wants a nuclear weapon. They want a massive military strength to be able to basically cause mischief around the Middle East and to take on Israel, take on Britain and take on America. At what point do you think that the West, whether America, whether Britain or their allies, whoever, at what point should people stand up to Tehran and go, we're not going to allow you to do this?
The JCPOA was agreed. Yeah, they've got a fatwa on actually going up to create a nuclear bomb, nuclear Richmond. There was a fatwa there. They destroyed.
So I don't even know what you're talking about. Answer the question, Phil.
No, I'm just telling you. All I'm just telling you is you can attack Starmer as much as you want, but at the end of the day, the person who created this mess, this global collapse of the economy, where pensions will get decimated, where people will be out of work, there'll be no economy in the UK.
That's rubbish. You're being completely catastrophising it.
I'm saying, if you look at the spillover effects of what's going to be happening, if I don't get that open, it's going to be cataclysmic for lots.
Yeah, I think strategically,
lots of countries, Julia, will basically look at what they're producing, fertiliser-wise, and they say, we're not going to give this up. We're going to keep that.
Yeah. But Phil. Years and years of many governments downgrading our manufacturing has made us, we are uniquely impacted by this, but a lot of other countries are impacted by it too.
Exactly.
But I ask you a simple question. At what point do you think that the West should step in and prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? Because if you think the world economy is damaged by Iran now...
Iran are now going to do exactly what North Korea did and going to get a nuclear weapon.
They've been trying to get one.
That will be the deterrent. Do you not understand why Trump doesn't attack North Korea?
Yeah, I know. That's my point. That's my point. That's why we need to go into Iran now.
Iran will now get a nuclear missile, and I've seen the video of what happens, because it will take about 13 tactical nukes to take out Iran. It will take out one tactical nuke to take out Tel Aviv. And I've seen it. It's horrible.
Phil, you're not... Phil... But that's the reason why you go in to stop the Tehran regime from getting a nuclear weapon.
It's a mosaic. It's not even centralised. They work autonomously. People just haven't got a clue. They just think that Mad Mullah's bad, we're so good. It is that simple. It is that simple. They are a danger to the Iranian people, to the region, in particular Israel, and to the West. They are fostering terror attacks around the world. They need to be stopped. We cannot let them get a nuclear weapon. When would you stop them getting a nuclear weapon? They're going to get one now.
They're not going to get one. That's the whole point.
We can't even find the uranium. We can't even locate the uranium. It's crazy. I mean, this is madness. 1953. We went in there. They had a democracy. We went in there. We didn't want to...
Oh, look, we've got all the history. No one's saying the world has always been a wonderful place and everyone acts, in other people's national interest. Again, this is my thing. If you're just going to say, oh, well, it's just fine, we'll just let them get one, well, fine. But I hate to tell you, at that point, they can close the Strait of Hormuz any time they want. I'm going to have to leave it there because time is against us. And I know Philip here in the studios itching to get in. We're going to have another course again on a better phone line next time, Phil. And we'll have another Barney Phil in London there. Philip, quick response, please.
Two very quick things. One, if Iran gets a nuclear warhead, it will disappear under a mushroom cloud. Israel will nuke Iran before it allows it to get one attached to a missile. Full stop. We will know if it's got one. Israel will drop a nuclear weapon on Iran if they think Iran has got a nuclear warhead.
Because they have to act first.
Because they have to act first, because it's national survival. And then what Phil was talking about, a larger civil service. No, he was conflating a peacetime economy where defence is given an allocation of money to a total war economy, which we had during the Second World War, where everything in the country is focused on war output.
Yeah, absolutely, which is what's happening in Russia right now, and pretty much what's been going on in Iran, which is why the people are so poor.
Exactly.
Anyway, 11:37 is the time. Very quickly, we're giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000, completely tax-free, here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Here's what you need to be able to do to get in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Right, quick break, and then we'll be back with James Mathewson. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 11:40 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Philip Ingram is still with me. We'll get his thoughts on what my next guest has to say in just a few moments. James Mathewson is a writer and broadcaster and joins us to talk about, a lot of the big stories in the news. Very good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia.
First thing I want to talk to you about, because we talked a lot about what's going on in the Middle East, but I want to talk about there's a new poll that suggests that people believe that Britain is more divided now than at the time of the Brexit referendum in 2016. Just to give some stats there, this is a poll for the Telegraph. More than 4,900 people across the country were polled, so it's a really big poll. And more than three-quarters of voters and a majority of all social groups think that the country's more fractured than it was a decade ago. The country is split by identity, by age, by geography, by their political views. Also, the majority of the public feel let down by national institutions, including the government, the BBC. 2/3 of voters think politics is broken and that no one knows how to fix Britain. And you know, it's all rather depressing news, that particular issues, things like fear of crime, the scale of net migration, the disconnection, the split between the old and the young, welfare versus warfare in terms of the choices between the spending commitments. Big divides. Do you agree with that majority who think we're more divided now?
Yeah, I think so. I think undoubtedly. I think it's most people's experience, isn't it, that there's division kind of in every family, in every friendship, in every, you know, it kind of spans across. And it's anecdotal for a lot of people that will know and they will have seen it and experienced it themselves. Even you and I, Julia, we're an example of this, aren't we? We're
we get
quite
on
divided.
perfectly well. I can't think of many things we agree on.
No, but we're kind of the representation of that, aren't we? It doesn't mean that we can't plod along as we are, but it certainly is concerned. I think the thing that unites everyone is the fact that no one's happy with anything, which is quite interesting, really. It's just the way that we fix the things and the solutions that we have that are often the points of division.
But the thing that I think most worrying for me is not that people have a different idea about, how the country or how the world should be organised and what motivates people. It's capitalist versus communist, the left v right, Brexit, Remain, whatever it is. I'm willing to believe that on both sides of those big block divides, that people come from a good place. They think that the world will be a better place and more people will benefit if their means and ends were achieved rather than mine. And I'd like them to believe that I'm not being paid by someone to say my views or have nefarious aims in wanting things. I think most people come to these things with a good heart. They're well-meaning. The trouble is, in this poll, it just seemed it's a feeling of despondency and despair that really, really worries me. I think when you have a whole population, and I think a lot of people in the West generally are feeling this idea that sort of, there's nothing we can do about it. We've given up on democracy, given up on our politicians, given up on belief that we can go forward. That's a very different attitude from the post-war years, very different attitude from, say, the Victorian age, that view that the world is going to get better, we're going to get better off, our kids are going to do better, and that we're going to make progress. And it doesn't feel like anyone of any generation feels that anymore.
No, you're absolutely right. And the biggest danger of that's apathy, right? Which is how democracies die. It's how, all of our society that we've built up over time. And I know we have different opinions on where we should be putting money in that society and how we should be doing it, but that doesn't mean we disagree with the outlines and the parameters of it. My problem is, and I know I've made this clear plenty of times, I just think it's the quality of our political class and the quality of our representatives that's caused this. To see people sitting in the highest offices in the world like Donald Trump, complicit and involved in one of the biggest paedophile scandals of all time, somebody who has 34 felonies against him.
Well, you say complicit. I mean, you're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm sorry, but there is no evidence that he is. I mean, I'd like to see all the documents.
I'm not mentioned in the files a million times, Julia. You're not mentioned in the files a million times.
They moved to the same social docs. I'm not defending any of these people.
But my point is here that somebody of that character, somebody of that quality of personality, being in the highest office in the democratic world, right, is going to inspire hopelessness in most people.
Well, but again, I would throw that back at you and say, and again, a lot of the criticisms from the left about Donald Trump is, if you guys could put up in America the vaguely sane and competent competition, he wouldn't be president.
Oh, God, yeah. 100% it's a failing of the left. It's 100% a failing of progressive political movements that we're here. The Democrats failed, and that's why Donald Trump's in power.
If you all stop pushing nonsense, like your net zero madness and your woke nonsense, and saying that women have penises, you'd get elected.
This is where we get into this thing, Julia, right? And you and I, look, when we sit across each other and we look into each other's eyes in person, as we did the other week, we know there's more in common than that divides us. However, you going on and saying things like women with penises, an explosive language, deliberately divisive.
Why is that explosive language? The Prime Minister of our country thinks that.
You're contributing. You know you're contributing.
No. Stating facts isn't divisive.
It is. It's not. Because you know that's divisive.
Because women don't have penises.
You and I don't get to decide what is divisive or not. It's whether
you and I also don't get to decide what is a fact.
Well, no, but that's the problem.
So if I state a fact, if I state that that's up and that's down, if I state that this phone is pink and you say it's green, is that me being divisive by saying, no, it's pink?
Yeah, because you're a clever person, Julia, and that's a deliberately simplified version of what goes on.
I'm just going to do, I haven't done it for a while, so it might have grown. I'm just going to double check. Nope, still haven't grown a penis.
Wow, okay.
Ladies listening, do have a check, because James apparently thinks you might have grown a penis overnight.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Really, well, isn't it ridiculous? And yet, so many on the left claim that some women have a penis.
The thing that gets me is I think if you claimed you want to genuinely engage with these issues, you would have a trans person sat here and you would be talking to them.
I've spoken to many trans people on my show.
You would be engaging with them and you would be trying to understand things, because we can't always understand everything from our own perspective.
No, that's not a question of understanding. No. There are some things that are just biologically. There are things like gravity and biological sex differences, and they are simply established facts. They're not a matter of opinion or not a matter of feeling. But this is why Donald Trump gets elected. This is why Reform are leading in the polls.
Untrue. It's
because of nonsense like this.
No, it's dissatisfaction with everyday quality of life that has led to people like Donald Trump and Nigel Farage being supported by so many people, because they're offering the oldest trick in the book, which is divide and conquer. It is point at people, trans people, migrants, whoever you want to point at them and blame them for the issues that have been caused by years of unfairness built into our society, built into capitalism.
But they would argue that the unfairness is, for instance, not having borders and allowing people who've got no right to live in this country to be here, or people to come here to then to not be net contributors. That's not blaming migrants. That's blaming politicians for. No, it's about blaming politicians for making terrible decisions as politicians.
Mm-hmm. And we can hold politicians to account. That's important. But we know for a fact, I mean, we spend more time talking about migration than anything else in this country. It's all we talk about in the media right now. It's obsessive.
I think we talk about the cost of living.
Yeah, but we don't.
But they're related, aren't they?
Economic impacts of that. We don't talk about the economic impacts.
Yes, we do.
Of austerity.
Yes, we do. That's rubbish. Yes, we do.
We don't talk about it as much as we talk about migration. And when we see tax cuts for billionaires, why on earth are we not as outraged?
When did billionaires get the last tax cut? Richer people are paying more tax under last Tories and under Labour.
No, it's not. We know it's not.
No, they are paying more tax, and I'm glad they're paying more tax. But they are paying more tax.
Yeah, Griff, it's not proportionate, is it, Julia? When the average person
so what you said was untrue, and what I said was true.
No, but that's not how it works. It's about a system of taxation, about looking at doing things differently, right? And that's the point here, and that's the frustration that we hear. And actually, your last caller, I think, was it Philip? You can hear the frustration, not just at the world stage and all of the things that are happening on it, but just the fact that we are in a situation where, and your viewers, I'm afraid I have to have an uncomfortable conversation with them about this, because anybody who is still standing beside people like Donald Trump right now, you need to have your head checked, mate.
Well, a lot of people on your side are standing by the mullahs of Iran.
It's not about sides.
No, you literally just said it was about sides.
No,
you can't have it both ways, James.
You've got conservatives and former Republicans coming out. You've got people from Trump's own administration resigning because of lack of evidence with regard to the Iran stuff. You know, national security advisors.
It's an absolute nonsense to say. Look, we know that Iran were trying to make nuclear weapons. We know that from their enriched uranium. We know that. That's a fact. How close they are to it is a different element of debate.
Don't do his work for him. Don't further that narrative.
The Iranians have been open about how much enriched uranium they've got and how far it is enriched.
Bragging about it. What are we going to do? Where have we ended up here? What was the point in the 1,600 civilians who've died in Iran? What was the point?
Well, if Iran is pushed back another 10 or 20 years from getting a nuclear weapon, I would say I'm afraid that's a price worth paying.
Already, the strikes.
And if you're more concerned about those 1,500 civilians than you are by the 30 or 40,000 civilians killed by the Iranian regime.
The strikes that took place last year between, as Philip said, your mate Netanyahu and Trump.
They're not neither of them are my mates.
You come on and you spend all your time furthering their talking points. And
I don't further their talking points at all. I give my opinion, and when the facts back their position and my position, I support them.
The facts do not back them. You have a murderous regime.
A
murderous regime in Tel Aviv.
Iran is the murderous regime.
It's also a murderous regime.
When was the last time the Israelis massacred 30 or 40,000 young people protesting on the streets?
Let's look at Gaza and look at the genocide.
There's not been a genocide in Gaza. Even on Hamas's own figures, they say 80% of those killed in Gaza were Hamas operatives, according to Hamas's own figures.
The Israeli bloodlust knows no bounds,
Julia. And that's a blood libel. That's a blood libel, and you know it.
Gaza. They haven't had enough of genocide in Gaza, and they're taking that into Lebanon now.
Is why this country is divided. This is because genuinely, Yeah, if you genuinely think that Israel's the problem in this situation, that's where division leads. I've got another guest waiting to come on. Otherwise, I would carry this on, frankly, for another 3 hours. But James Mathewson, I'm going to have to leave it there. Writer and broadcaster. We do get on in public. Even if I disagree with someone vehemently, I don't feel the need to not be able to sit and have a pleasant cup of tea with them in the studio. But on this, going to have to agree to disagree. Feel free to give your views. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, Ross Clark on solar farms. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
God bless us having a conversation about the divisions in this country. And then having a big division over women having penises and whether or not Israel committed genocide. There we are. Philip Iggy's been desperate to get in. I'm going to let you have a very quick word before I go to my next guest on that conversation with James Mathewson.
Well, it's interesting. People on the left seem to be the ones that create many of the divisions because they want to create divisions in society. Most of society is aspiring to improve themselves and just get on with their lives. But no, if you're on the left, you have to be working class and you have to be demanding this and you have to hate the billionaires and it has to be genocide and all this. Oh my God. Get the language of hate out of it.
Yeah, but also don't say that things that are facts, provable facts, are divisive. Facts aren't divisive; they are facts.
Facts are facts.
Anyway, let's talk to our next guest. He's someone who's been big on facts over the years. Ross Clark. He's author of Not Zero: How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish You, Help China, and Won't Even Save the Planet, and numerous books since. But that's the one that's relevant to the net zero debate. A very good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Julia.
Sorry you left so much time, but you know the left. Anyway, Ed Miliband, our favourite man, he has approved Britain's biggest solar farm, despite objections from nearby residents who likened it, I think rather absurdly, to Chernobyl. This is the Springwell Solar Farm in Lincolnshire. It's going to have a capacity of 800 megawatts, enough to power some 180,000 homes a year. But the development proposed by EDF and Luminous Energy is the 25th large solar farm approved by Labour since coming to power. But they basically completely overruled local people. What do you make of this? this?
Yes, well, of course, when it was fracking, Miliband and all this type, they were all on the side of local opinions. Local people didn't want these developments and they shouldn't have to put up with them and so on. But of course, when it's green energy infrastructure, all that goes out the window, and Miliband's just approving all these sort of 25 solar farms, wind farms and battery installations as well, just nodding them through, no concern for
and they take up a lot more land as well. I mean, you drive on the motorway now, and you've got these huge big solar farms for mile after mile.
A fracking rig takes up hardly any ground, but this latest solar farm in Lincolnshire, that's 7 square miles. That's 7 square miles of countryside that's been industrialised, 7 square miles of farmland that's been taken out of production. And all for energy security, we also need food security.
Yes.
We need to think about that, and that's going out of the window.
But also, I would have thought, I mean, these are the people who are telling us off for, paving over your garden with a patio so you can enjoy your garden more months of the year, but at the same time, effectively, to all intents and purposes, paving over the countryside. That can't be good for wildlife, which they also claim to care about.
No, it isn't. I mean, technically, I live in a conservation area, and I'm supposed to ask permission, even if I want to prune a tree, just
I live in
a tree. I have to, and yet down the road, we've got planning applications for a sort of battery installation that sort of, no sort of plan for what happens in terms of serious fires as we've had with these things around the world and so on. And Miliband's just nodding through all that kind of stuff.
But also, crucially, this isn't going to really help us when it comes to our energy security and the cost of living, cost of all our fuels going up, because we're still reliant on fossil fuels. And instead of fracking under our land, instead of drilling in the North Sea, we're importing it from elsewhere, including, absurdly, from the North Sea, but owned by Norway.
Yeah, absolutely. Any day now, Miliband is going to declare a great success. He's going to be able to declare the first brief period when the grid has run without any fossil fuels at all. We were down to about sort of 3.2% gas the other day. We had a sunny day. It was about 40% of our electricity was coming from solar panels. But of course, that was when demand for electricity was really quite low. Not many people have their heating on a warm sunny day. You don't need your lights on and
Easter
so on.
holidays.
Really low. And of course, every evening the output from solar farms drops off to precisely zero. And what do you do then? And by the way, when we had 40% of electricity being generated by solar, what we're forgetting is that 25% of our electricity was being imported. Over the last few days, we've had these very, very high rates of electricity being imported to Britain via subsea cables.
Even while the sun has been shining.
Yes, yeah, and of course a lot of that electricity is generated by gas, and in the case
it is.
of France and the Netherlands, coal.
It's genuinely an absolute joke, isn't it? And again, you can't just have a form of energy that is dependent on the weather. We need to have it all year round and 24 hours a day. And again, they want to push this AI revolution. That's going to involve more energy every week. It's going to demand more and more and more. We haven't even got enough right now. I'm afraid, Ross, as I've been saying for a long time, we're going to have to wait until we have the blackouts before everyone else wakes up to the sense that you've certainly been talking all this time. If you've not read his book yet, Not Zero, please do buy it. You'll know so much more than Ed Miliband about energy. Ross Clark, always great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. More from Philip Ingham coming up, and also going to be talking to retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, if you've missed anything from the show, you probably would have enjoyed quite a lot of the interviews so far, and a lot of wit and wisdom from my guests this morning. But don't forget to go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. Never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Iran accusing Donald Trump and Israel of breaching their ceasefire agreement. Tehran declaring the Strait of Hormuz is still going to be shut. We'll be talking to a top military guest about that. We're also going to be talking about Labour rejecting calls to allow store security guards to carry truncheons or pepper spray so they can actually disable shoplifters. I'd be all in favour of that. This, of course, after Waitrose sacked outrageously, one in a Clapham store, sacked one of their guards for actually tackling a shoplifter who's now been offered a job by Richard Walker at Iceland, and all credit to him for that. Also, the Green Party leader Zach Polansky did his launch of his local election campaign today. One of the policies, by the way, that Zach Polansky has is to reduce the speed limit on Britain's motorways from 70 miles per hour. Yes, guys, it is 70, not 80, wink, wink, to 55 miles per hour. Funny thing is, though, even most Green voters, 6 out of 10 Green voters, are against it. Any more mad policies from anyone? Roll on up, guys. Anyway, joining me today, delighted to say, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. He's the man, I was saying, was making some very good points throughout the show. Always good to see you, Philip. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, once again.
We've been discussing the whole gamut of where we are in the Middle East, and indeed in terms of Britain's position in the world today. Keir Starmer is in the Gulf. He's going to Saudi yesterday, he's in UAE today, hoping apparently to play some role brokering the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, big cost of living crisis for us here. We think there's an element where, according to some reports in the press, that he's trying to sort of play the grand statesman on the world stage, because they think that's a good look for him ahead of local elections. Not sure that's going to work out as well as they think. I think this is utterly delusional. Meanwhile, you can't even control the migrant dinghies. Hundreds more coming across every day. 4 people died in a dinghy disaster in the Channel yesterday. Meanwhile, we've got a Russian warship in the Channel guarding 2 basically sanctioned oil vessels, this part of this shadow fleet that Russia has of its oils basically going around the world to make money illegally because of the sanctions. They're not supposed to be selling their oil as a result of sanctions from the Ukraine war. But a Russian warship basically alongside these vessels, then followed by a British ship doing absolutely nothing in waters just a few miles from our shores, as Vladimir Putin, to all intents and purposes, does 2 fingers up to our Prime Minister and indeed to us, and nothing is done. And I'm asking your reaction to all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Send us a message on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Before we go to our guest, Philip, just a brief sort of summary of your views on that.
Well, it's a complete joke, and the British ship that's shadowing it is a floating supermarket and fuel station. It's not a proper warship.
Probably why they haven't intervened.
Yeah,
but it's a bit embarrassing that they haven't.
Well, yeah, we could intervene from UK mainland with helicopters and special forces quite easily.
Should we be intervening?
Yes, 100%.
If you say you're going to seize these ships and you don't seize these ships...
Yeah, Putin's testing us, and therefore we're being found wanting. He's going to test us more and more and more, which is why we're going to see more attacks on our subsea cables. We're going to see more cyber attacks. We're going to see more attacks on our streets where warehouses are burnt down, people are assassinated, and everything else. It is happening on a daily basis.
Yep, and we're doing nothing about it. Great. On that happy note, well, let's talk to someone who knows all about what is going on right now. He's been at the very, very highest levels in the American military. Retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commander of the US Army in Europe, who joins us now, I'm delighted to say. Good afternoon to you, Ben.
Hey, good afternoon, Julia.
So much to talk about. I don't even know where to start. But Ben, let us start just first of all in terms of, do we have a proper ceasefire in the Middle East, and is it being breached?
Well, I would say no and yes. I mean, within hours of the declaration of a ceasefire, Israel hammered several Hezbollah targets in Beirut. And then the Iranians, of course, have launched against targets in, I think, UAE and Saudi Arabia. So I don't know how you can claim that there's a ceasefire that's still in effect. Now, I will agree that these things are never like turning a light switch on and off. There's usually some ragged edges to it, but this was pretty significant, and it highlights a problem that the Trump administration has in always declaring victory and declaring something's been done before it's really been done.
Yeah, and we've seen that with the previous presidents as well, have we not? But in terms of the attacks on Lebanon, one, Israel, if they think they're going to be forced to stop rocket attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon, want to escalate, and it's the biggest number of missiles filed in a very long time. But also, of course, if they're no longer targeting Iran, they therefore have those planes and missiles to target Lebanon. But the Israelis are very clear. Lebanon isn't included in the deal. The Iranians said it was. The Pakistanis who brokered the ceasefire said it was. Initially, it appeared that the Americans said it was, and now UK, so the US Vice President J.D. Vance, who's going to be leading these ceasefire talks from tomorrow in the Middle East, he says, look, it's an understandable misunderstanding, a reasonable misunderstanding by the Iranians, but Lebanon is not included. I mean, who do you believe?
Well, this is the problem when you don't have your professional diplomats involved in doing the actual negotiations. I mean, these are a son-in-law and a real estate friend that are doing all of our negotiations. So these are the kind of mistakes and misunderstandings that happen. And I mean, the Iranians, they're Persians. They've been doing this for about 3,000 years. And so in this case, I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I would tend to believe what they report more than I would from...
Quite something for a former US commander to be saying. Donald Trump's language, I haven't had a chance to talk to you before the ceasefire was declared, but this came after incredibly bombastic, threatening language from Donald Trump. I know you are certainly not a Donald Trump fan. You've always made that very, very clear. In terms of the language and bombing Iran back to the Stone Age, destroying the Iranian civilization, all of that, what did you make of those threats? Did they, as the Trump MAGA fans are claiming, did they bring Iran to the table and therefore it worked, and that's that's the power of the the art of the deal, as his people will say, or did that take the world to a very, very dangerous precipice?
Well, I'm reluctant to say because I don't know for sure what all the real facts are. There's multiple 10-point plans floating around out there. The president does have a tendency to claim and state bombastic things. And so while that may put huge pressure in a deal-making situation on the other side, it also makes it very difficult to have any confidence in what's the actual state of play things are in. And so certainly the amount of military power that's out there would have had some effect. But then the Iranians, of course, are not trying to fight us Navy to Navy, Air Force to Air Force. They're using the leverage that they have.
Well, they haven't got a Navy and they haven't got an Air Force anymore, we're being told.
Well, that's pretty much true, which also highlights the fact that for them, that's not the key. So destroying all their Navy and Air Force, which needed to be done, by the way, I'm not against any of that. And hats off to the U.S. and Israeli armed forces that did that. But, the Viet Cong didn't have an Air Force or a Navy either. And we spent 20 years in Vietnam and lost to them.
Yeah, and that's a big difference, isn't it? And if you've got basically a refusal to put ground forces down, I don't think that's something the American people, indeed most of the world, will want on the ground in Iran, other than maybe Karg Island. You're not going to be seeing a regime change or the like. We've got the Strait of Hormuz, which previously was open, is now still closed. Massive impact on fuel supplies, fertilizer supplies, pretty much everything, across the world. I mean, really dramatic impact on some of the poorer nations really relying on that, and certainly a massive impact on Western Europe, including in particular the UK, because of our insane net zero policies. Are you hopeful that Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, others will be able to help broker the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz without a $2 million charge per tanker?
Yeah, I think freedom of navigation in international waters is a very important point for all of us. The U.S. Navy, the Royal Navy, and others have always played a role in ensuring freedom of navigation. And while that's never perfect, that's pretty much what we had until 5-6 weeks ago. I think that the UK and France and others can have a role, and now is the time when we really need allies. When the president should be working hard to strengthen the relationship with our allies, who can bring all kinds of pressure, economic pressure, diplomatic pressure, working through interlocutors. And I think, of course, the prime minister could play a role here. It's not going to be the U.S. Navy or the Royal Navy that opens up the Strait of Hormuz. It's going to be the leadership in Iran recognizing it's in their own best interest.
Indeed. I know still work closely with NATO. Donald Trump has been highly critical of NATO. He sort of threatened NATO not just with leaving, but also over attacking and seizing Greenland, owned by part of the Danish territory, a fellow NATO member. He's been criticising NATO again, even after a meeting with the Trump whisperer himself, the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who normally sort of soothes and calms him, calls him daddy, and puts things right. How damaged do you think NATO relations within the NATO allies has been? How damaged is that now by, well, not just what the threats over Greenland and others, but indeed over issues with Ukraine as well and Russia, but specifically over this Iran conflict and the claims that Donald Trump says, that frankly NATO allies weren't with him, even though there is no requirement under the NATO treaty for them to have acted within this war.
Yeah, this is a complete misunderstanding or a refusal to understand the purpose of the alliance, and a false expectation that whatever the U.S. does, we therefore expect our allies to come along with us. That's not what NATO is about. Now, the president is correct that almost every country in the alliance depends on something that comes through that Strait of Hormuz. So it is in the interest of other countries to make sure that it is kept open as international water, not something that you have to pay a toll the way we nations used to do, going past Denmark into the Baltic Sea for 3 centuries, I think. So I think we'll eventually figure out a way to do this. The damage to the alliance, the cohesion, has been significant, but it's not irrecoverable. And I hope that all of our European allies will take a long-term view of things. You'll remember, and most of your listeners will remember, that Great Britain and France were very unhappy with the Eisenhower administration during the Suez Crisis. Charles de Gaulle pulled France out of NATO for several years back in the 60s. Turkey and Greece have been at war with each other, off and on, particularly in Cyprus. So, I mean,
we've survived worse.
It's not a garden club, that's for sure. And I think eventually wiser heads will prevail, but people really need to think about the value of the alliance. And for the United States, Europe is America's biggest trading partner. And so it's in our interest that Europe is stable and secure and prosperous. And we need the bases and access and the intelligence sharing that nobody else can give us like our European allies.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It is absolutely vital. And again, the key Western blocs, economic and political blocs who have the same values, democracies, sticking together in the face of the rising threats of Islamofascism, Russia and China combined, seems to me to be the sensible thing to do. In terms of the Russian threat, and the whole point of NATO was to defend the Europe from the threat from Russia after the Second World War. We're told by John Healey, our Defence Secretary, that the UK faces growing Russian aggression. He's been talking about how Russia's been running a secret submarine operation in the North Sea, and they've been shadowed by British vessels, submarines basically monitoring our cabling and the like. And there has been increased Russian activity in the Atlantic north of the UK. We've also had these two basically sanctioned oil tankers travelling through the Channel just a few miles from our shore, a few weeks after our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that he's going to be seizing those vessels that have been sanctioned under the Ukrainian war sanctions. And yet there it is with a Russian warship next to it, us tailing it, doing absolutely nothing. Including America, but our NATO allies, including Britain, are they doing too little to take on Russia and to respond to the clear and blatant testing that they are doing of our resolve and our capability?
Well, I was pleased to hear Mr. Healey calling them out so specifically and directly, because for too long, too many governments have been reluctant to actually call it what it is.
What purpose does that serve, though? We see you. So what?
Well, because you have to tell your own population that Russia is at war with us, even if we don't think we're actually at war with them. The Russians, for them, war is everything from misinformation to nuclear weapons, and it's a continuum, and they use whichever tools they want. So it's an important step to talk to our own populations about what's happening. And so then when you do take actions, whether it's to seize a vessel or make arrests or do whatever, the population understands why. And I agree with Philip. I mean, if you don't take action, if the Russians never feel consequences, this will only continue. Now, UK is the leader of the JEF, the Joint Expeditionary Force, which is a very good coalition of nations with real capabilities. And I think the JEF could probably be more effective seizing these Shadow Fleet vessels inside the Baltic Sea, where you've got a lot more opportunities to do it and more capability than trying to do it out in the open sea. And I hope we'll see that happening in the future.
Okay, just finally, to wrap this up, Ben, where do you think this all ends? I mean, a lot of people, were predicting, God knows what, proper world war, collapse of the world economy just a few days ago. Where do you think that the ceasefire, the talks, the relationships between Iran and the US and NATO allies, where do you think that we're going to be heading in the next few weeks and months?
Well, I have to say, obviously, I was relieved that we did not have the apocalypse the other night that the president had threatened. What a irresponsible, reckless thing to say, but at least it didn't happen. Where does it go from here? I think the biggest pressure on the president is going to come from the economic pressure and Republicans looking at a disaster in November, the midterm elections, and the impact on his legacy and his ability to do anything going forward after that. So at the end of the day, he will find a way out, I think, somehow. And when the gas over $4 a gallon in the United States, that is significant.
Yeah, indeed. Again, I was thinking, what if Americans talk about their prices, for gallons and litres, but wow, you guys would be absolutely freaking out if you had to fill up your car here. Lieutenant General retired Ben Hodges, former commander of the US Army in Europe. I so appreciate you joining us as always. I know Philip Bingham, you know him well. Philip knows everyone. There's no guest we have on that Philip doesn't know somewhere from the military. They all know each other. And Philip, listening to what he has to say, anything to add?
Yeah, General Ben's absolutely fantastic. Going on to the submarines, submarines, calling them out. Submarines are designed to be covert. And if you can call them out and say, we know what you've done, we know you've been here, you've been there, you've done this, you're telling the Russians and the submarine commanders that they're not covert, they can't hide, they're not doing...
But isn't it better that we don't say that and then we carry on following them?
No, you call them out publicly and turn around to them and say, because we are following them anyway, saying you can't do your job. And therefore it's embarrassing the Russian submarine commanders, it's embarrassing the Russian command structure, saying, you think you're doing this and you're being sneaky beaky, we're watching you the whole way, mate. And if this is a shooting
not
war...
how I'm reading this.
No, from a military perspective, this is exactly right. Call it out publicly. It used to be we didn't do any of this. You call it out publicly and you tell the Russians, we know what you're doing.
But the timing of this press conference today, I don't know when they were booking. But the timing of that after this revelation about these sanctioned vessels in the Channel.
Yeah, that's deflection. It is a face saver to try and deflect. It's a good operation. The anti-submarine operation that's on, it's working very well.
We suddenly hear about it today.
But the timing of that going out is just to try and protect Keir Starmer.
Yeah, very interesting. Anyway, 12:21 is the time. We're going to get to your calls. Love to hear what you have to say. Lots of calls on the board. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. First of all, though, I'm giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000 completely tax-free here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. And here is how you could be with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Right, we'll take a quick break, then we'll get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:24 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Well, an awful lot talk about where we are in Iran and where's the Prime Minister and what's he doing. Mark is in Glasgow, wants to have his say. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Julia. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Donald Trump and his language. Donald Trump doesn't play by the diplomatic let's talk and wander around in grey suits. Donald Trump plays by the same rules as the nutters, the despots, and uses the same language because that's what they understand.
This is true.
The sooner our rather wet liberals, not our war brigade, wake up and say, oh, hang on, they're going to have nuclear weaponry. It's not just going to be aimed at Israel. And all this nonsense we had the other day with Allah Akbar outside 10 Downing
that was
Street.
just horrific.
It was, and why weren't the riot squads brought out? It's a terrorist regime, 21 terror plots in Britain alone last year, and many more in the years before, and many more to come. And we're sitting there saying, not our war. And as for that pathetic imbecile who trots around and says, not our war, but, oh, we have made the peace. It is so embarrassing, seriously.
I agree with you. I think it is embarrassing. But I mean, and I do get there's an element where, you know, when like Donald Trump sent that message out saying, you know, all the expletives, you know, open the effing Strait of Hormuz, you crazy B word. Now, you know, I think very unpresidential, unstatesmanlike. I'm sorry, I didn't like his language. I think he undermines himself because I think he's got right on his side, morality on his side in this case. But I mean, but there is an element where being unpredictable helps with that. Do you think that Keir Starmer, who's, let's face it, the most predictable man on the planet, do you think him playing any role out there is going to help?
It's like having Mr. Bean, isn't it, really? I mean, we have no navy, no ships going there. We're not going to have them using our bases, and yet he wants to turn up and say, we've got peace. Yeah. The only peace that he's had in Scotland is a sandwich apiece. That's the only thing he's ever got. I'm sure his mummy tucks his, just like John Major, tucks his shirt into his underpants and sends it out.
Totally. Do you think this whole number 10 shtick of parading him as a world statesman is going to help?
World statesman, you're having a laugh. The man couldn't run a bath. He can't run Britain.
I know. I mean, I don't think he's a statesman in his own downstairs loo.
It's only in his own lifetime, no, not in anyone else's. He's an embarrassment. He's a humiliation to Britain. He has one or two decent ministers. The rest of them are lefty loons who, frankly, shouldn't be anywhere near running a country. And the Green Party, sorry, I can't mention Zach, a.k.a. David. Who the hell is supporting that person?
Quite well, people who get their news from TikTok. Mark, I just really wish you would get off the fence. Thank you very much indeed for that call. Great fun. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Good morning.
Afternoon. Someone's on his Easter holidays.
Good afternoon. Yeah, that's right. And crackerjack from Mark. Look, Starmer is like John Terry when Chelsea won the Champions League. Yeah. He put his shirt on and he was desperate to be involved in the celebrations, but he never played, and the papers destroyed him for that.
Yeah.
Starmer knows he's finished in May, so he's trying to get a job at the United Nations. The only reason he is in that part of the world is to ask if any of our soldiers who helped at the bases should be prosecuted for war crimes. That's the only reason he's there, because he's that duplicitous.
Don't. That's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. I mean, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'll tell you what, though, the reality is John Terry had played a bigger role in his team actually winning that trophy in the end, because he'd actually had played previously. Keir Starmer not. But this is the thing. I mean, what should Britain have done?
We should have been four square alongside Israel and the United States. And I mean that quite. We've got brilliant members of the RAF. There is one girl who helped protesters. She was a nurse. The RG went into the hospital and they raped her so badly that she had to have her uterus removed. If for nothing else, we should have done it for that. But obviously, Starmer couldn't do that. And remember, the thing about Lebanon, that is the gun that the IRGC in Iran hold against Israel's head. That's why they want that in negotiations. So in 2 weeks, the Americans can rearm, they can get the Iron Dome up and stronger again, and then I just want to see them go back in there and crush it. We've got nothing to lose.
Well, that's it. There is the worry that the Iranian regime still in place, just rebuilds, and there we go. And if they get even one of their 10-point plan, then they'd be able to do that. Really good call, Andrew. Thank you very much. Philip Ingram, I mean, this is the worry. Are we going to be... OK, let's assume the Strait of Hormuz gets reopened. Again, big assumption. And it's free for travel, as it was previously. Would we be in a better place? Was the world a safer place? Is the Middle East, is Israel a safer place? Are the Iranian people safer than they were 6 weeks ago? Not
with the rump of the regime, including the IRGC, still in place. They need to be totally destroyed and totally annihilated, because the element that's left now is more radical and more extreme in its actions, and therefore any move to try and protest or to bring in an alternative government, they'll come down exceptionally hard. And the 20 or 30,000 that got murdered a few days before Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu started their war into Iran will seem like nothing compared to what they'll do in the future. This is the worry, isn't it? 12:30 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about lawless Britain with David Shipley, writing research on prison and justice issues, a former prisoner as well. In particular, I mean, quite near me in Primrose Hill in North London, there's been a fatal stabbing, a warning to us all, says the victim's family. Plus, why is Labour rejecting calls for basically arming our security guards to stop shoplifting? I know I don't mean tasers, weapons, but what's wrong with pepper spray at the very least to disarm those shoplifters? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:33 is the time. Philip Ingram's still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And we're going to be talking right now about, lawless Britain. We could do all 3 hours of the show on that every single day, could we not? But I'm delighted to be joined by David Shipley. He's a former prisoner. He's also a writer and researcher on prison and justice issues. David, always great to have you join us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Quite a few stories I want to go through, but in particular, we've had a lot of stories about security guards against shoplifting. We had the case of a Waitrose security guard who got sacked for basically, you could say doing his job, the job we would expect him to do, which tackling a shoplifter, stealing a whole load of lint 13 quid Easter eggs. Those are pretty big Easter eggs, 13 quid. And he tackled him, the bag, there was a tussle with the bag, and the bag broke open, the shoplifter got away. He sort of threw a bit of chocolate on the floor, and he got sacked for basically tackling the shoplifter because it is against store policy for anyone to actually tackle a shoplifter. Of course, the shoplifters know this, which is why these supermarkets become easy prey. Now, he's since been offered a job by Richard Walker of Iceland, which is great news. But store security guards were told by the policing minister, Sarah Jones, should not be allowed to carry either pepper spray or truncheons or anything else that they could use to combat shoplifting, despite many people calling for them to be effectively, able to do the job of, legally apprehending people stealing goods. Where are you on this?
I think what's really interesting about this is the state is clearly failing or failed in many of its obligations. One of the first duties of the state is to keep its people safe, secure the borders and maintain law and order. And all across that, the British state is failing. And as a result, we're seeing very naturally people are looking to alternate security providers. They are saying, well, hang on, if the police aren't going to stop large-scale shoplifting, we want to pay a company to do this. Yeah. And the state doesn't want that to happen because the state relies on it being seen as the only organisation which can legitimately use violence. And so we've got a weak state which isn't able to use violence properly to protect property anymore, but it also doesn't want to let anyone else do it. Because
but we're not talking about beating the hell out of these people. We are talking about physically grabbing them and stopping them from leaving the store with or without the goods, and there being, a consequence to their actions. It is also, I think, befuddling to most of us that, even if a member of the public, you're allowed to not use violence, you're allowed to use necessary force to prevent a crime being committed, surely.
Well, I think what we have, though, is sort of these security guards are effectively urban scarecrows, aren't they? They're there to sort of look as if they're deterring but actually do nothing. And shoplifting itself is functionally decriminalised. There's almost no chance of even being arrested. A lot of businesses don't even bother to report shoplifting to the police anymore. Even if someone gets caught, they probably won't get prosecuted. If they get prosecuted, they certainly won't be going to prison. Yep. So, and particularly after the new reforms under which any sentence under 2 years will the default assumption there's no prison. So we have functionally decriminalised shoplifting. Yeah. So it's no wonder that it's soaring because there's no real risk. And I think, we if the police aren't willing to start treating this crime seriously and grappling with these thieves and preventing them, then of course businesses will naturally want to have private security guards. But again,
Waitrose or Sainsbury's or Iceland can afford security guards. My local Boots has got one, but the local card shop can't afford a security guard. The local odds and ends shop can't afford a security guard. All they can do is lock their doors, and what they're doing certainly around my way, which is there's loads of organised criminals, and they sit and watch on the side. They see when things are stocked up. They storm in. They basically have a WhatsApp group where they message each other and say, look, we've seen X or Y, close your doors. And basically they wait, and if I turn up, they go, well, she's not one of them. They let me into my shopping and close the door again during the shoplifting hours, because now there are shoplifting hours. The happy hour for shoplifters. It is extraordinary, and it's so frustrating for so many people. And again, I find it frustrating because I see shoplifters walking out of my supermarket, my local supermarket, which is a Waitrose, and I'm not allowed to stop them. The security guards are frustrated because they're not allowed to stop them physically. But there I am paying now. But I'm paying more because they're able to take stuff for free. When someone jumps over a barrier of a train station, my rail fare goes up because they're travelling for free. And people are allowed to be frustrated. And I'm genuinely of the view that people are getting more and more frustrated. I think people have had enough. People can sense the unfairness. And there's one thing that Britain feels strongly about is fairness. If that isn't our sort of, our essence, we have a sense of fair play, and it doesn't feel fair anymore. These people are getting a free-for-all. There's no consequences, and people want something done.
They do, and it's not just a feeling of unfairness. It is unfair. Yeah. The people who work hard and obey the rules are paying more because they are subsidising all this theft, which is just allowed to happen, and those people who commit these thefts suffer no consequences. It is wrong, and people are rightly becoming more frustrated. I think we are moving towards a point at which people will potentially start to enact vigilante action against
Well, they'll do what I think you say vigilante. It seems to me they'll do what we should be doing, which is manhandling and tackling these people to the ground. I mean, I'm all in favour. I mean, let's just have a garrote wire for these guys. I'm done. I think a lot of people just I've used this phrase quite a lot on the show. I'm done now. I think we've all just had enough. And it's interesting because you say the police won't take any action. Of course, my guess is, ordinary police officers don't bother arresting these guys. They know perfectly well it's a load of paperwork, which apparently they don't like doing. Shouldn't be a load of paperwork. These are simple crimes to write up. And they know they're very unlikely to actually get prosecuted. They know if they do, you say that they're not going to go to prison. They get a slap on the wrist. They've already had 40 of those. They don't care. So there is kind of a pointlessness to it. What needs to happen is you go to prison. End of.
There need to be consequences, of course. And I think that's the problem. If there's no consequences for committing this crime, and it's worth remembering, this isn't... Sometimes I think people imagine shoplifting is done by, a desperate, hungry mother who wants to feed her baby. It's not. It's organised crime where meat is stolen or baby formula is stolen or whatever it might be stolen to then be sold.
Yes.
This isn't people stealing because they are in desperate straits. No. They need a piece of bread. It is by and large an organised criminal activity at all of our expense, and it should be treated like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but it doesn't get... I'll tell you something else also people feel, it's not just... I mean, again, I feel unsafe in a store where I know that shoplifters can do whatever they want to do, but certainly on our streets and in our parks. We had a fatal stabbing at a very famous London beauty spot. It's featured in many a film, at Primrose Hill. It's one of the points that used to be, watching fireworks in London. And it's certainly somewhere, my family spent a lot of time. But Finbar Sullivan, a 21-year-old, died after taking his new camera to the viewing point on Tuesday evening. His father has said, look, this should be a warning to us all. This could happen to anyone. Police were called to reports of a fight at about 6:40. They arrived to find him with stab wounds. He's pronounced dead at the scene. Another man, also in his mid-20s, was taken to hospital with stab injuries. No arrests have been made. I think anyone's shocking about that. There's quite a lot of video footage. We don't know, exactly what happened or, what happened before the video footage of a fight started. But the idea that on a nice sunny evening when people are hanging around in a park, and by the way, a fancy part of town, the Jude Laws and everyone else. This is, these are multi-million-pound houses around here, fancy restaurants, lots of celebs. A posh park in a posh part of the city, and people are getting stabbed in broad daylight. This is scary.
It is, and people are, I think, right to be scared. When we talk about the country being lawless, what we're describing really is the increasing lack of consequences for crime. The high chance that people who commit crime will get away with it. Only about 6% of crimes result in someone being charged. Crimes of the victim, and the fact that actually, of course, there's always been violence in London, but I think it was generally confined to intra-gang activity in particular areas. There were areas you didn't know. And what we are seeing now is a consequence of a failure in policing over a couple of decades, of increasingly, bad policing, light touch policing, and the large-scale importing of population groups that are way more criminal and way more violent, is that criminality is now spreading. And we are now seeing the end point of those two trends, which is that there will soon be no parks in London where you will want to be after dark, because the risk of this kind of crime is just going up and up.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's reports about Angela Rippon, now 81. She's been victim of 2 terrifying muggings in London. To be fair, these were between 2000 and 2001, much long time ago, before the big austerity and the number of police being cut down. But again, people don't feel safe. People not because the number of people who've had phones, bags, stolen and been threatened at knife point, women being assaulted and the like. You're a writer researcher on prisoner justice issues now, but I suppose you have this fairly unique expertise among people doing that, of having been a former prisoner yourself. In terms of the people you met behind bars, the people you were able to, you shared a cell with, you spoke to every day, what would motivate them to not commit crime? What could be done that would actually work? Because it's all very well sort of, middle class people go, oh, I think this will work. What would actually make a difference?
I think the big one that makes a difference, and this is, even left-wing justice researchers and academics realize, is actually the chance of being caught.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the big reasons that we've got this growing problem with crime, and the big reason that people feel that the city and the country are lawless now, is that the chance of being caught has gone down a lot. If you go back 15 years, something like 20% of crimes resulted in someone being charged. Now it's about 6%. So
that's a big difference. And also, a lot of those repeat crimes, so people who steal phones every day or equivalent of that 20 years ago, they're committing 10, 20 a week. They've got a pretty good chance of getting caught at some point in that week.
Well, you would hope so, right? But I think it varies by crime, and some sort of acquisitive theft of mobile phones, for example, generally has a much lower solve rate, because it's if your phone is snatched on the street, there's not much the police can do. Similarly,
even when they know where it is when it's being tracked, they don't do anything about it. But there we are.
Yeah, this is it, and I think there's sort of an unwillingness to. We've got a state, I think, and the police are part of this, who are just unwilling to change their rules. We've built this cage of how we do things, the security guards can't stop people, the police can't just go into that building where they know the phones are because we can track them. There's this unwillingness to do anything creative or anything bold,
sensible. I have to say,
sensible,
that would work for me. It's always really good to talk to you, get your perspective. David Shipley, thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, it must really, really make your blood boil. You're I think what we call an alpha male. You're ex-military. You know how to handle yourself. This must infuriate you.
It does, and what David was saying makes a lot of common sense. The lack of consequences, the failure in policing, but it comes down to more of a problem that we have in our society, and it's a lack of respect within society. There are no consequences for youth. There's no respect taught to our youth in their homes, in their schools.
Totally.
There's no respect for anyone in authority. There's no respect for elders. I remember growing up that whenever an adult walked into the room at home, you stood up. If you didn't, a mother had her words with you because you were not showing respect for her. And whenever you were a child, you would offer your seat to an adult if all the seats were taken.
I've seen one of these things. If you tell someone off on the public, the transport thing, or if they're acting up, and they always look at you with, they're utterly flabbergasted. Obviously, I'm being a complete Karen. I'm proud to be a complete Karen. But they'll look at you like no one has ever told them off before.
Exactly.
When you think, I know, that's the problem.
We need more discipline back in society.
Parenting. 12:46 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about the Green Party launching their local election campaign. What are their plans if they got into office? And hey, coalition government in the future, not looking unlikely on the current polls, would like to basically limit the speed limit on Britain's motorways to 55 miles per hour. Funnily enough, this doesn't even have the support of the majority of Green voters. We'll find out what Green Party activist Dr. Ashok Kumar thinks about that. Up next, this is Talk.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned, and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram, and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning, and unfortunately, conflict. This is Talk War, and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:49 is the time. Ian Collins will be here in just a few moments to tell us what's on his show right now. We're going to be talking about the Green Party. They've just had their local election launch this morning. There was no dancing as far as I could tell. Joining us now is Green Party activist and Associate Professor at Birkbeck University, Dr. Ashok Kumar. A very good morning, so good afternoon to you, Ashok.
Afternoon, Julia.
So I'm sure you were very excited by this launch, and one of the key things that we did hear from him was basically talking about, again, always international affairs. And I think this is what throws us an awful lot. The Green Party seem to spend very little time talking about green issues, even climate change and net zero. I mean, not just I want them not to talk about that, but an awful lot of time talking about things like, you know, Israel, a genocide, and what's going on in Iran, rather than say how often bin collections will be and the like. Why is that?
Well, no, there was a lot of local policy actually at the launch. You'd have seen that we didn't really even talk about international policies, but international policies affect the local. I've got
quotes from him.
The reason why that fuel prices are going up, the reason why fertilizer prices are going up, the reason why we're having pressure on inflation, the reason why interest rates will go up is because of the war in Iran, in which Britain is playing an active role. We're allowing our arms to be used, we're allowing our bases to be used to bomb Iranian cities, we're providing intelligence to both Israel and the US. So you can't disconnect the international from the local. I mean, you care about international issues. Most people care about international issues on their own. Mm-hmm. But even without that, these affect everyone every day.
Well, I mean, they do, but there is also the impact of a small point worth making that the IMF and the OECD have said that Britain is going to be among the first world countries, you know, the top economies, is going to be uniquely badly affected because of our energy policies at home, energy policies on which the Green Party would go further and faster and more, you know, and more extreme, I would say, than even the Labour Party with Ed Miliband as Energy Secretary, or the Tories previously, all of which I condemn for putting us in a position where we don't make any of our own fertiliser, we don't drill for have new licences for drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea, we don't have fracking, I mean, Labour say they're going to build nuclear power stations, haven't seen much of that, but the reason why we are so badly hit is because that we don't have that own homegrown energy supply, which is because of net zero policies, which the Green Party support.
Well, that's just not true, Julia.
I mean, which bit's not true?
I'll explain. Firstly, fracking was just not even viable. The Tories backed banning it because it was not viable.
Rubbish.
Secondly, when you look at the oil in the North Sea, that's under the international market. Whether we private, if it was
but then why is Norway not as badly affected as us?
Because Norway has a nationalized system. Here we have a system in which private companies sell it on the open market. That's the distinction.
Norway gets money because they get taxes from it.
Yeah, we could get taxes from it, but of course we could get taxes from it. But what you're arguing is if you produce it here, somehow it'll come here at a cheaper rate. That's simply not true.
When you have a gas pipeline directly to Britain and you're not paying the heightened prices of liquefied natural gas, which costs a fortune to not only liquefy but also to transport on a diesel-powered, oil-powered tanker, it is cheaper. Yes. Sorry to use facts.
The most effective way for us to produce energy here and keep it here and not be traded on the international market and reduce prices in everyone's homes, in everyone's cars, is by producing natural energy, solar, wind in Britain.
Fossil fuels are natural energy.
Fossil
fuels are natural energy. How do you make fertilizer from solar panels?
Yeah, you can't make fertilizer from
you need fossil fuels. We don't make fertilizer at all in this country anymore. We've limited our supply of fossil fuels. However, all of our food requires fertilizer, which is made using fossil fuels. We have to import it all.
Well,
How do you do that with solar panels?
I mean, you say you don't care about international issues. Part of the reason why we're seeing a fertilizer
I do care about international issues. I don't understand why a local election campaign is focusing on what apparently the false claims of genocide by Israel and focusing on that rather than issues facing people in their local areas. And you say it's because of the cost of living. And I'm telling you the cost of living the issues that most people are facing are as a result of net zero policies pursued by the Tories, Labour and supported by the Greens.
Not true, but also
I mean, it is true.
For example, when I came on the show after we won in Gorton and Denton, you said, why are they focusing on international issues? That's a national election issue. Well, we're a national government that engages in international issues. So you had a problem with it when we had a national election. You have a problem with it when we have a local election.
Well, it wasn't a national election. It was one by-election. You know, there were others. I'm thinking Gorton Denton has more worries that it needs to have about what's going on in its own area than that.
Yeah.
But listen,
I mean, clearly the Green Party won with their messaging. So.
But they did. Yeah, they absolutely did. No question at all about that. Some of the things that Zach Polansky is promising, and he wooing voters on the left, certainly really putting the rabbit among the pigeons when it comes to the Labour Party right now, but promising rent controls, crackdown on private housing developers and the like. Now, you and I both know, you pay attention, you're a clever guy, wherever rent controls have been brought in, and they sound good to people who are struggling with rent. We've got a terrible situation with people's high rents and people not being able to get on the housing ladder, and absolutely. But wherever rent controls are brought in, there is then a shortage of rental properties and rents end up going up rather than down, and they are scrapped pretty much everywhere where everyone's sensible. You know and I know, if you really want to have lower rents, we just need to build more houses, don't we? Not control rents.
Well, let's look at the evidence, right? Right now, Londoners spend 40% of their wages on rent. That actually leads to disinvestment because the cost of everything goes up, especially labor. That has an inflationary impact. But when you look at the evidence, 16 European countries have rent controls. Most of them have less homelessness, less displacement.
They build more houses.
Lower rent than England.
Because they build more houses.
And if you look at Britain had rent control between 1915 and 1988. It was a national system of rent controls. And it didn't cut supply. It was considered the golden age of house building. Year on year, we built between 300 and 350,000 homes per year between 1915, that's 73 years, and 1988. Do you know how much we built year on year since we privatized the healthcare? We deregulated, we got rid of rent controls. This is Thatcher's reform. We built 200,000 per year as the population goes up. So
and most of those properties are not affordable.
Examples.
I think you are using correlation, not causation, when it came to why
I'll explain why this is.
Okay.
Would you like
very briefly
why this is?
Very briefly.
Once you turn homes into an asset, you raise the cost of land, you raise the cost of this as an asset. It means that councils cannot build to the same capacity because the cost of land has gone up so high. When you bring down the cost of land and reduce it as an investment opportunity, you can build homes.
All you need to
not
do
as an asset.
All you need to do is just to allow more homes to be built and allow the private sector to build more homes, free up land, including the green belt, most of which isn't green, it's brown. And when there are enough homes for everybody, and also maybe not importing 10 million more people to live in homes which are needed.
This is such a bait and switch. So you lost.
No, it's not a bait
and
switch.
Britain is
Rent's gone up because there's more demand for a limited supply.
No, Britain is the example.
It's called economics.
No, it's not basic economics. This is the same argument people made around the minimum wage when you said, oh, if we introduce the minimum wage, nobody will hire anyone. The opposite is true. There's a carbon Krug study.
Oh no, I'm in favour of the minimum wage.
You know but
as you get more money, the higher minimum wage we've just seen has actually seen fewer employees. One more thing I want to get to. You've got like 20 seconds on this because I didn't get it. I'm very frustrated. Green Party talking about a speed limit of 55 miles per hour on our motorways. Most of us think it's bad enough having 20 miles per hour on major roads in our cities. Not even a majority of Green voters support this. This is a dud of a policy, isn't it?
Julia, you could do better than just read the Daily Mail sham piece. That policy comes from policy comes from 2009 when the Green Party was 1/5 of the membership it is today.
So it's not true.
This is when segways were in vogue. And it's not the policy and the party manifesto. The party manifesto is very clear. It's like drivers aren't the enemy. Being forced to drive
because
public transport is broken is the problem.
Okay, you say it's not true. We'll find out. They say it's true, but there we are. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much, Oshik Kumar. Really appreciate that. 12:58 is the time. Quick reaction to all of that from Philip Ingram.
Well, it's it's all over the place. There's no logic to any of the discussions whatsoever, and it's again.